Check, check. There we are. Hello. How you guys doing tonight? Had my mic muted when I first came on. I was not prepared. What an amazing week it has been. I'm so excited for tonight. I've been looking forward to it. In fact, last night I was tempted to... we were on such a good roll the last few days before this that I was tempted to do this last night, but I just simply couldn't. There's too much going on in my life right now. And I needed a night to settle into my new house. I'm moving right now. Or I should say I'm in the middle of settling into a place I've just moved to right now. How you guys doing? How you feeling? Looks like we're still waiting for some people to get in. Am I doing this for you? Yes, I'm doing this for you. Mantella Void. CD coasters are not going anywhere. My chat's lighting up. I love to see it. I've got a couple things I want to say, but first, I'm going to do that thing that I'm not so good at, which is posting on social media, because I feel obligated to post about what we're doing here. I just, social media is kind of counterintuitive for this guy. So I'm forcing myself to do these things. But I'm doing the bare minimum. I'm only posting to my Twitter account, because that's the only one I feel okay about. True story. I'm just going to let people know we're live here, and then we'll jump right in. This will take me just a second. And goodness, chat is lighting up. Amazing. I will have to catch up on all these chats. I have been paying special attention to these episodes. I'm not really usually very good at reading comments and stuff on sketches. In the past when I've published sketches and stuff, I spend so long on these kinds of things, like sketches and whatnot, that by the time they're out, I just let go of them, and I just let them run. So I've not historically looked at comments on my content too much. But on these, they're a bit different on these live streams. And so I've been paying very close attention, because this is something very special to me. And I really, we've had such a positive response these last handful of nights that I'm paying extra close attention to feedback and caller participation and chat participation. The chat has been so helpful on these. For those who are just tuning in and wondering what this is, the chat can probably clue you in a little bit, but also I will talk a little bit about what this is for those who are confused or wondering what we're doing here. I will, after I figure out what the hell I'm doing on my Twitter, I will give you a few words. And then we're going to take some callers. So bear with me for about 30 seconds as we're firing up here. All right, I have tweeted this episode, this live stream. I will ask, I'm not usually very good about asking people to promote things, but because this is like a sentimental thing we're doing, I will ask that we're trying to get callers here. We're trying to get callers who have things they need to talk about. That is difficult experiences, challenging circumstances, things, just confusing situations, all of the above. We really are trying to ruthlessly pursue conversations with people who just need to get something off their chest or vent something or process something in real time. And what this is a safe place where anyone can call in anonymously with anything that they feel like they need to talk about. Again, a personal experience. We're not talking about political theories or theories of any kind or science or technology. We're not talking about ideas. We're talking about experiences, and we're supporting people here, and that's what this is. And I've just been so blown away by how amazing the chat has been in these last few episodes at supporting these callers as we're taking them. For those who are new, you're about to see what we're talking about. It's been such an amazing thing to watch and to be a part of, having people call in and just pour their hearts out. And, people are feeling safe to do that because this is anonymous and people are sharing things that they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing unless it was anonymous. And this chat has just been so much more of a resource than I thought it would be. Typically the YouTube comment section is a really toxic, toxic is giving it the benefit of the doubt, actually. It's worse than toxic usually. It's usually just like this cesspool of people posting stuff that probably shouldn't be posted in any context. But on the last few nights at least, it's just been so amazing. I hope it continues because it's just felt so meaningful and inspiring. And it's really been encouraging to me even to just see what this is turning into. And I hope it's been the same for the viewers. Essentially what we're doing, it's got two components. It's a safe place for viewers to call in and talk about anything that they feel like they need to talk about. Again, a personal experience, not ideas, not theories, nothing like that, but a personal experience that's difficult. We've just had so many incredible stories the last few nights of, I have to go back and retrack, but we had somebody call in the other night saying that they were, that they just recently discovered that they were conceived in a crack deal, and that they were processing this, and this person spent over 20 minutes on the phone with me, and they were crying as they were processing what this meant for their lives. And it's just been so inspiring, and that's just one example, but in my opinion, that's been the most amazing story so far. This caller that called in was just such an inspiring person. It just felt like that. These kinds of stories are why we're doing this. There's people out there that need to talk. This is a crazy time where people are feeling isolated and aren't sure where to turn. A lot of people can't afford therapy. This is not therapy. I want to be very clear for those who are watching for the first time. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm someone who's been through a lot of stuff in my life. I'm someone who cares, and I'm someone who has a platform, and someone who wants to use that platform for stories like these, for people who want to share anonymously. And again, the chat is serving as kind of a resource for these people. I'm working in tandem with the chat to support these callers in real time as they call in and share their stories. And it's helpful for the callers. That's part one that I'm describing. And the second component is for the viewers. There's so many viewers who have gotten so much out of these live streams, just listening to the people who are sharing. And so it's kind of a twofold project. It's for people to share and for the viewers to support, and also the viewers are getting something out of it as well, because a lot of people are going through these same issues to varying degrees. And so this is just this wild experiment we're doing, kind of a blend of, I guess, 90s talk radio and late night talk radio, and this new YouTube live world that we're in. So if you feel so inclined, please support this stream by promoting this to your circles of influence so we can get callers from all over the world. We've got a toll-free number, 1-800 number, toll-free international to over 100 countries. And the goal of this stream is to reach people from all over the world in different circumstances and just learn what the world's going through, and in hopes that that will be encouraging for people everywhere to listen to, and also that it'll bring us together by supporting each other through difficult experiences and help us empathize with each other and just feel a little bit more human in this crazy time we live in. So with that, if you feel so inclined, if you've been enjoying these streams the last few nights, please help me. I just sent my second tweet in 2 years. My last tweet in 2 years was last night. We're digging deep into this, so if you feel so inclined, it would mean a lot if you support us by spreading the word. And we're about to open the phone lines and get this party started. But before that, a couple of housekeeping items. Bear with me as we get a slow start here. First off, I just want to say that I can't remember if this was 2 nights. I believe this was the stream before last, but it might have been, it was either episode 3 or episode 2. This is very new, this thing we're doing here. It's something I've been thinking about doing for a long time and just finally decided to pull the trigger on. And we're kind of figuring this out in real time, how to do all this. So bear with us, please, as this kind of grassroots thing gets its start. But a couple of nights ago, there was a person who called in saying that their brother, who was in church leadership, was discovered by a sibling to be in an open marriage situation while they were in church leadership. And this caller called in and was really distraught over this and didn't know what to do. And the chat and I were suggesting that they talk to their brother. And I just want to say to that person, again, I don't know your name. You were completely anonymous. I don't know anything about you other than what you shared. But I just want to suggest at the risk of confusing you, I just want to say that you might consider, whoever you are, if you're still listening, you might consider the benefits of just accepting the choices your brother has made. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with him, but letting your brother take his own path, at least consider that and what that might look like, to just continue being there for your brother. And again, even though you might disagree with him, just letting this thing run its course. That was just a thought that popped into my head yesterday. I was thinking about that call. And I may occasionally post thoughts like this here at the beginning of streams. As I have them, I'll always make those amendments here at the beginning. And I had that thought. You might consider just letting your brother do what he's doing, for whatever that's worth. I don't know your full story. We talked for about 20 minutes, but you might consider that and just continue being his brother. Maybe that's best. Maybe not. But for whatever that's worth, if you're still listening, I had that thought. Okay. So I intended to get to the chat a little bit before we started this, but we've had so much of a run-up to this that I don't want to put in any more exposition. So we're just going to jump in. I'm going to get the phone lines prepared and going to flash up this number on the screen. Somebody suggested that I add a little disclaimer to the screen about what the kind of calls we're looking for are. So I've added this little thing to the screen saying the kind of calls we're looking for. I hope that's helpful. This is a phone number you can call. It's toll-free to over 100 countries, as I was saying. So anyone you know anywhere who may be going through something that they're not sure how to talk to anybody about, this is intended to be a safe place for people to call in with difficult stuff. And again, the chat and I are kind of just helping people talk about these things anonymously. And none of us are therapists. Some of the people in the chat may be therapists. It's actually amazing to see how useful the chat has been. And, but, again, just to, triple check, everybody's clear. This is not intended to be a therapy session. This is just a safe place for people to call anonymously. It's much more anonymous than therapy. We're not collecting any information on anyone, and we don't want to know the information. In fact, I'm ruthlessly hanging up on anyone who does not adhere to very specific criteria for these calls. If anyone shares personal information, they get toasted. That means I hang up on them. This is ruthlessly anonymous. The point is just to bring people together through difficult experiences. And a lot of people are going through difficult stuff. So that's the point of this. And with that, I'm going to pour a little bit more water. And then we're going to open up these phone lines. And I will be referencing the chat a little bit, but I have no idea what's going on in the chat right now because I just wanted to get those couple housekeeping items out of the way. So, here we go. Hi, thanks for calling. Hello?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. What do we want to talk about tonight?
Am I on?
You're on the air.
Oh, how you doing, Julian?
I'm all right. How are you tonight? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I'm here to talk to about something that's kind of been going on with me and my little brother, actually. Essentially what happened was he kind of recently had to subsequently move in with me based on sorry, I probably shouldn't be using swear words. Any kind of messed up situation that was going on at home. Basically my brother got in a really heated argument with my stepdad, and he kind of shoved him into the wall. And
your brother shoved your stepdad into the wall?
No, sorry, other way around. My stepdad shoved my brother into the wall.
Wow. Okay, I'm sorry, keep going.
And when he tried to run away, he slammed him into the wall a second time and kind of verbally berated him and told him that because of the nature of the argument they were having, it was a really just heated situation. They never really got to that point before, but I mean, regardless, I guess I'm just glad that he's moved in with me now, because he's at least not in that environment. But on the other hand, I'm worried that I'm not the greatest role model or example for him in general. I guess, I don't know. It's just kind of a hard situation, I guess. It all just kind of happened so fast these past couple weeks.
Why do you feel like you're not the best role model for your brother?
Well, to be honest, it's because recently he was recently diagnosed with bipolar disorder as well. And beforehand I had been an influence on him with marijuana and alcohol and shit, and I just kind of feel because of that I put him in a worse position, and maybe that's what making his actions, and at the time his behavior a little more erratic, and I felt kind of responsible for that, I guess. And even when he's moved in now, he's not smoking now, but I'm just I feel bad because I kind of I use it as a crutch, and I still use it every day, and I feel bad using it around him because I don't want to be a bad example, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I also have such a hard time quitting that I don't I don't know.
So what's the reason for the call tonight? Is it a marijuana dependency, or is it the abusive stepfather, or is it that you feel like a bad influence on your little brother? What's the deal?
Yeah, I'm sorry it seemed kind of all sporadic. I just kind of want to
I'm just trying to understand.
give an explanation why he had to move in, I guess.
Right.
But now that he's moved in, I guess what I'm calling it about is how I can be a better role model for him, and that can be a better brother for him in like his time of need because he's in a really hard spot right now. I kind of wanted to call on his behalf.
How old is your little brother?
He's 19.
Oh, how old are you?
I'm 21. I'm about to be 22.
Oh, wow. Well, in my opinion, neither of you should be smoking weed, especially a lot of you, especially a lot. I mean,
probably.
I know it's legal. I mean, it's legal in some places, but you know, yeah, the research. If you look at the research, like your brain's not done developing till your mid-20s. It's pretty risky to be smoking a lot of marijuana that young.
Yeah, I actually have read that you're supposed to wait until you're about 25 because your prefrontal cortex isn't properly developed at that time period.
That's right.
And if I'm being honest, even after reading that, I've had a hard time stopping, and I probably should.
Wow.
But yeah, but like I said, gladly he hasn't been using it all like lately, especially since he started a new like SSRI and another medication for his for bipolar, obviously. But
right.
So like I'm glad he's not like mixing those two things, and so I'm trying to keep a closer watch. But I guess I just feel like I guess I just don't know what to do because at the same time I just don't want to be a bad example by using it around him. That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't want to be harsh, but if your brother's being exposed to marijuana at 19, I don't know where you are or if it's legal there. So that aside, I don't want to know where you are. This is anonymous. But even if it's legal where you are, and again, I don't want to be harsh, but if it's legal, even if it's legal where you are, if your brother's 19, your brother's no better off staying at your place if he's just around weed all day than he is being shoved into a corner by your stepdad.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I feel like, it's not really like, I feel like it's not really as dangerous of a situation of like, if I'm like stepping outside, like in my backyard, I guess, like smoking as opposed to like my stepdad kind of like getting physically violent with him.
Right.
But like, I do understand that it's not, it's just being like it being around in general because it might make him want to do it again. And I'm like, I don't want him to do it again at all.
Again, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm being direct intentionally because your brother's very young and so are you. But I don't know to what extent your stepfather has been abusive. I don't know if your brother's life is at risk. I've only been talking to you for a couple minutes here, so I don't know the full situation. But from what I'm hearing, I'm just like my initial impression is that like it's not a great. It doesn't seem like a great thing for your brother to be exposed to a bunch of cannabis. I grew up in an abusive household, so bear that in mind. I'm taking that into serious consideration. The abuse thing, I think that's very serious. But the cannabis thing also really concerns me. That's why I'm being so direct. I'm not trying to guilt you. I don't want you to think I'm saying like you're doing something wrong, but like those are two very serious things. I want to know more about the situation, and I'm sure the chat does too. I'm going to be looking here at what the chat's saying. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here. Sorry, I was kind of gathering my thoughts.
Yeah, good. Take your time. There's no pressure here. This is supposed to be helpful. How can we make this a helpful call for you? We want to make this a beneficial call. I'm not trying to be nasty.
No, I don't think you're being nasty at all. I appreciate you, giving your input. I guess I just
I care about you and your brother.
I feel like maybe, honestly, just maybe like words of advice if you've ever had maybe like troubles, quitting like addictions of your own. Like if you ever like maybe addicted to any kind of substance, or maybe like kind of a word of advice for like maybe me to be able to get, maybe not do this as much so that I'm not a bad example for him.
You're bringing up a fascinating conundrum, and I might stumble my way through this conversation. So I ask for some forgiveness in advance if I stumble through this. I'm going to be. This is an interesting conundrum because on one hand, cannabis is not addictive. It's not addictive. Nicotine is addictive. Alcohol is addictive. Cannabis is not addictive. It's habit forming.
Mm-hmm.
But so is sugar. Sugar is actually addictive. That's a bad example. What else is habit forming? I mean, all kinds of things are habit forming. Masturbation is habit forming. Masturbation isn't addictive. There's a difference between habit forming and addictive. You aren't addicted to cannabis. No one is. I'm sure there are people with addictive personalities who get addicted to all kinds of things that aren't inherently addictive. But do you have an addictive personality?
I believe I do, and it actually studies have shown that people with addictive personalities, and also people in general who just use it like daily,
Mm-hmm.
can have withdrawal like symptoms. And usually when I do quit, it only lasts about a week and it goes away. But
Well, I'm familiar with cannabis
at the same
withdrawals.
time, I feel like
There are withdrawals, but that doesn't make it
Yeah.
necessarily addictive. You get like bad dreams, you get night sweats, you get, there's a bunch of different, you get nauseous, there's a bunch of different symptoms, of course, but it's not that you're addicted. It's you may have an addictive personality. Tell me more about that. It seemed like you thought you have an addictive personality.
Well, I guess I mean, I used to abuse like prescription Adderall and like kratom, and kratom's not prescription, but that's and like I guess and I used to smoke cigarettes, but I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. I was able to curb those. But like I guess I guess you're right. I shouldn't really. I guess I'm not trying to like put myself into a box and say I'm like addicted to weed or whatever. But I guess I'm just like, I don't know. I guess maybe you answered my question. I guess I just really need to like focus on finding my way of like just stopping using this in general, and like just so I can, I guess, be a better role model. I don't know.
It's tough because you've kind of opened a Pandora's box a little bit, because cannabis is it's kind of a Pandora's box. Once you open it, it's really hard to close that box.
True.
Cannabis is
Very true.
it's a mind expanding substance. I don't like calling it a drug because it's a plant, and I know it's still illegal in some places. I don't know if you're in a place where it's legal or not, and I don't want to know where you are. But all that aside, I'm just trying to be very clear. I have no problem with cannabis, but it's a mind expanding. It gets you thinking, and it gives you. There's new neural connections that happen when you consume cannabis in any form, whether you're eating it or smoking it or vaporizing it. No matter how you're doing it, it expands your mind. And if your brain is not done forming, that expansion can be too much too soon, and it's very, very dangerous. And it's a huge conviction of mine, and that. Again, I have no problem with cannabis, but there's a lot of people today doing it way too young, and it's a huge concern of mine, because I think it should be legal everywhere. I think it should be federally legal, and yet
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I have no personal problem with it, but I think it's probably more dangerous than alcohol if you're too young. I'll put it this way. I think it's totally fine. I'll put it this way. Let me backtrack. In Europe, it makes perfect sense to me that in some countries you can drink as young as 16. That makes some sense to me, because at least here it's like 21 seems kind of crazy.
Yeah,
it's like you can go to war and you can't have a drink. Like, that seems crazy to me here in America. And yet with cannabis, like, I have less of a problem with cannabis than alcohol, but I think it's more detrimental to a lot of young people than alcohol would be.
Oh, I agree.
At such a young age. And so that's where this is coming from. I'm not trying to come down on you or sound pessimistic or harsh. I want to be very clear. But I am kind of concerned that your little brother's being exposed to things like that.
And no, it's totally a fair concern. Like, that's initially what was going on, and that's what kind of, I feel like, could have been part of the problem, and that's what scared me. Like, and that's gladly why that's why I'm kind of glad he's not using it at all right now, and I'm very aware, like, I'm very certain of that, because I've kind of like hid my stash and like made sure that, like, and he's never tried using my stuff like that before, but like I never, like, I just I guess, and I do agree, by the way, that like, especially to younger people, I think like smoking weed is a little bit more dangerous only because people think, oh, it's completely safe, it's harmless, compared to like alcohol. People know there's dangers and people drunk drive and all that.
Right.
But like younger people will like, oh, I can smoke weed every day. That's what I was like when I was like 17 or whatever. So like for years, I just been smoking weed like all the time, like every day. And
Right.
like honestly, yeah, that makes sense. Like it's more of a danger to like young people than alcohol to that degree.
Right. That's just my conviction. There's no science around that yet. Just to be very clear, that when I say that, I'm stating my opinion as someone who,
Right, and you're not saying that weed's more dangerous than alcohol, and I agree
right.
with
I just
that.
want to be very
Like,
clear, because we're talking about
not
some serious stuff. I'm stating some opinions. I'm not a scientist. I'm not definitely not a cannabis scientist. So I'm speaking from experience, and I've got a lot of experience. I lived in LA when it was recreational. I'll put it that way. So I've got a lot of experience with cannabis. Um, I'm not at all opposed to it, but I think that it is really risky. It's a huge concern of mine. There's because it's this. What do you do about it, right? It's like, yeah, I want to see it. I want to see it legal everywhere. I want to see it because it's just a plant. It's not like, I mean, the alcohol is processed. Cannabis is not. It's a plant. It's like,
right.
so that's how I see it, and I'm very much like a proponent of cannabis being legalized, and it's not dangerous. Like, but at the very same time, it's like it's a really slippery slope, especially with young kids. So I'm not sure how people are going to regulate this. Fortunately, I'm not a politician, so I don't have to worry about these things. But I still worry about them
Right.
because I believe that cannabis is healthier than alcohol, much healthier. It's actually not even that part is not my belief. That's just common knowledge, of course. But
That's fact.
yeah, that's fact. But I'm just again I might be beating a dead horse, but I'm just trying to be very careful because you're in a very specific situation, and I don't want it to seem like I'm coming down on you or something, or saying you're evil or something like that. But I'm also just like I'm just really concerned based on what you're sharing.
No, no, I understand that. Like, I'm not taking it as in like, I'm not taking it as you beating down on me or being like, you know,
So what happened between
like,
your brother and your stepdad? Your dad is your stepdad abusive? Is this a pattern?
no, that's the craziest part was like, it never really was a pattern before. He's only been like kind of verbally like abusive at times, never like physically.
Mm-hmm.
So it got really heated. Like, it was at the point where it was just him, my mom, and my brother like all arguing,
Mm-hmm.
and they were arguing about like because my parents are like extremely religious, but my brother and I are not.
Okay.
Um, and they just got into like a really like heated debate over that, and that's what caused the slamming essentially.
I see. Well, you're talking to someone who grew up in high school. I had a bunch of friends who smoked weed, and I was like the last person I knew to ever try weed. I was in my mid-20s before I ever was exposed to it. Actually, that's not true. A time or two early on, I did try it, but I just decided I wasn't going to do it anymore. I did it like one or two times before I was 20, and I decided I wasn't going to do it anymore because I saw it turn all my friends. I watched my friends have a really hard time getting jobs in their early 20s. And to this day, I'm in my mid 30s now, and to this day, I believe that a lot of my friends just smoked too much weed too soon. And that's a conviction I still hold. I think it's very dangerous if your mind's not ready for it. And it's a tough situation you're in because, again, you've kind of opened this Pandora's box of trying it. And a lot of people are in your situation where they're 20 or 22, 23, and nobody's exactly the same. I think these ages are averages, but the general scientific consensus is that unless you're in your mid 20s and your brain's done developing, it's
Yeah,
pretty
I started
risky.
at 16, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you sound coherent and you sound. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe I don't know. I don't know you. That's the point of this whole thing. I don't know you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that.
Maybe you're lucky. But I think it's still. Uh,
I think
it's.
that was a really well. Oh, sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
trying to cut you off. I was just saying that I think that was actually very well, a really good description to put it is Pandora's box because it really does feel like you've discovered this thing that is pretty much like, oh, I can have this perpetual feeling if I just smoke this plant, and then I'm just like constantly at like a level 10 instead of like a level like depending on how the day's going, I guess. But it's like a cheat code. It's like a cheat code for happiness, you know? It's like not really, it's not natural, I guess. But,
Well, it's not a cheat
you
code for
know,
happiness. You can definitely cannabis stresses your GABA neurotransmitters. If you do enough of it, you're gonna use up all the GABA in your body, and you're gonna become depressed. So it's not a cheat code. It is a little bit of a hack that gets your body to use some things it has in reserves, and that stuff is replenishable infinitely, the GABA, but it's not free. It's not a cheat code. It's very serious.
mm,
If you use enough,
actually, that's,
if you use enough of it, you're gonna find yourself in a whole world of pain. This is experience talking.
oh, that's fair. I mean, that definitely could be like related to, you know, why I've been depressed like in the past and even recently, and like, you know, like
Interesting.
it's, you know, it definitely makes sense.
Interesting. You're depressed?
Um, I would say like relatively depressed, yes.
Huh.
I don't go to like a doctor or therapy or anything, so I don't have any diagnosis, but I think you can kind of tell when you're depressed, you know, like you don't really need a diagnosis.
I don't like to hear that. That bums me out for you. I'm so sorry. Um, do you think you have it within you to close that Pandora's box at the very least for a few years until your brain's done developing? You sound like a smart guy, a smart person. I don't want to see you lose that.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, Julian. I actually really do, honestly. And I I think you actually are right. Like it's probably going to be better for me in the long run. If I do take like an extended break as opposed to like I just take occasional tolerance breaks for like a week or maybe a month at max, but it's never more than a month. But
Right.
um, or I don't think it, and maybe not even a month to be honest. But like you know, I guess you're right. Like probably for both my brother's sake and my sake, for the time being, it's probably better for me to like maybe just like find other ways to make me happy, I guess.
Right. The chat is lighting up with all kinds of suggestions, and I've not been able to find a moment to plug any one of them, but I do want you to, after this call, go back and read through the chat from the time during our call, because there's a bunch of good feedback in here that I think might be beneficial for you to read.
I will absolutely do that because I really appreciate that anyone would give any input. I really appreciate you giving all this input. Honestly, like I feel like I'm taking up all your time right now. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you called in. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I feel like we started talking about your brother who was in danger, and then we got off on this weed tangent. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to like throw so many different topics at you at once. I wasn't trying to, you know,
What's the real issue?
try to.
Is weed the real issue? Or, I mean, it sounds like we got to a big one, which I'm glad we covered, because it sounds like that might be the source of some depression or confusion
I
for
think
you.
maybe like the real issue is maybe just like me figuring out a way for me to be okay not using so that like or like not smoking so that um when I'm with my brother it makes it a lot easier for his process to go on. It's kind of like it's kind of deals with two problems in the same boat, I guess. Kill two birds with one stone. I don't know.
I would want you to,
Like maybe work on myself and my brother at the same time.
yeah, I would just encourage you to look at it as a investment in your future. I would highly recommend that you stay away from it as much as that might be a really difficult piece of advice. Because again, I do believe cannabis is a Pandora's box, and it's a tough thing to close that once you've opened it. But I would just encourage you to see it as an investment into your own future, into your brother's future, and maybe share that with him.
I will share that with him, and honestly, maybe for the time, like just to start off with, maybe I could just like start off with maybe like trying to do it just like a couple times a week and like kind of like wean off of it instead of just cutting itself off hard. But yeah, I think also, yeah, I will honestly, I will talk to my brother about honestly all of this tomorrow.
Good.
Like I think he's gonna love this. He's a huge fan of you as well. Like we've watched your stuff like since the very beginning of YouTube. Um, like Techno Jeep, all that shit, waffles. um, it's cool seeing you do stuff with Rhett and Link again, actually, to be honest, because it's been so many years and you're doing skits again with Rhett and Link.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been great. I'm most excited about this because we're covering some. I mean, the sketches are fun; they'll always be fun. But this format here is what I'm most excited about. There's a lot of people who've had problems like you've had that I believe are really important, and especially in this time. So I'm so glad you called in. I hope you'll call back if this continues to be an issue.
Well, thank you so much for your input, Julian. And I really appreciate what you do here. I think this format you have is really cool. I think what you're doing right now is really cool. I think the anonymous call-in is just in general, it's a good idea. And I hope you keep doing it. And I'm glad I'm glad to keep watching your streams, and I'll be keeping up with it. I'll be there in the chat.
Sounds great. See you in the chat. Take care. All right, I'm gonna open up the phone lines again. Chat, I'm sorry I was useless to you on that one. I was trying to find a good moment to plug some things. Taking the next call. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, Julian. It's kind of wild to talk to you.
Wild to talk to you too. What do you want to talk about?
I'd like some advice.
Okay. I can't promise advice, but I'm happy to listen and for you to share, and maybe the chat and I can support you in some way.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm a little nervous because I've been watching you since I was like probably 14.
Don't be nervous.
My older brother showed me you, and we've been watching you for forever. As soon as your newest sketch came out, I immediately sent it to him, and it was cool. It was like a cool time to talk back and forth. He and I don't talk too often.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. What do you want to talk about tonight?
I grew up, it's a little heavy. I grew up in a pretty like overtly religious family and community, and because of that there was like a lot of like sexism and stuff that was built into my understanding of most interactions between men and women.
Right.
And I learned from a pretty young age that like in order to be protected you had to be married.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard it put that way. That is, wow, that's
heavy. So there was just like a lot of like, if you were single and in the community that I was in, you were expected to give all of your extra time, extra money, extra efforts into the church. You had to, give up all of your excess. But if you were married and you, like, for example, didn't show up to church or didn't show up to a Bible talk, there would be, like, no questions asked because your first priority is, like, your marriage. Right. And so there was this, like, impression that you're married to the church if you're not married to another person.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
So from a really, really young age, I really wanted to get married, and I did. And the person I married is incredible. He's incredibly loving, incredibly thoughtful, very, very focused on the truth. We ended up leaving the church together while we were still dating. We got married, and now we're not in a church culture any longer.
Okay.
We haven't lost our faith. I know the last caller mentioned Rhett and Link, their like deconstruction. I don't know if you've listened to their Ear Biscuits podcast on their deconstruction, their spiritual journey. It's incredible for me. I've loved listening to their perspective. But now I'm realizing that getting married was a trauma response to some extent. That I really, really rushed into it because I was trying to protect myself.
Right.
And my biggest thing is I experience chronic pain. I have a neuromuscular disorder, That's incredibly rare. And the like comfort and reassurance is not exactly there from my husband. But I'm expected to only go to him, still like within my family culture and things like that. And so it's very awkward for me to look for help outside of it, because I'm so ingrained with this idea that like I have to go to him first and foremost with everything. I'm curious to kind of hear maybe your experience in your marriage, especially in the earlier years, and maybe some advice you would give to yourself in the younger years, and also what you think the role of a husband is to his wife in terms of being comforting and things like that.
Wow. I can already tell.
I know that's a lot.
No, I can already tell this
I know it's a lot. I'm sorry.
I can already tell there's a lot here. Let's take our time. Let's break these apart one by one.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thing you mentioned that I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to try to start at step one.
Uh-huh.
The first thing I remember hearing you say was that you have there's a lot of things you said, but the first real problem I heard was that you have this medical condition, and that you're expected within your own family to only rely on your husband for support of any kind. Is that right?
Yeah. And
like your parents don't want to know about your issues?
My parents are definitely very involved, and they have been like my support system for a long time. The difference is if I go to them, there's this like underlying premise that something's wrong in my marriage, that my husband is not fulfilling my needs emotionally or supporting me in the way that he should be, and I'm going to outside sources. And it's okay that I go to my parents, but it's kind of looked down upon, if that makes sense.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So your parents are open to your parents are.
You experience. Go ahead. Sorry.
I have not experienced that, but I'm trying to understand. So your parent, it makes sense to me though.
Yeah.
Anthropologically, in terms of, or religiously, it makes sense in terms of, the religion is this. There's so much tied up in all religions in terms of cultural expectations, and in America, especially, a lot of the America is obviously predominantly Christian, so I'm not picking on Christianity when I say this, but with America specifically, the Christians in America are very, very different from state to state. The expectation, like, I don't know where you're from, and I don't want to know where you're from, but I'm not familiar with that level of extreme with what you're talking about. But it also doesn't surprise me because it sounds like the whole. It sounds like the rest of the song, which is, like you grow up with us, and then you go you find a worthy partner, and then that worthy partner is, they take you on as their responsibility. And in Christianity, especially, it's very patriarchal. So the husband is seen as like the father, and it's like this thing, and it's like,
100%.
So I get that, but
it's very bizarre.
It's bizarre.
It's one of the most bizarre experiences ever.
Right.
I remember like many times having conversations where,
and I want to be very clear, just if I can just cut you off just for the sake of the chat, because I know the chat's going to light up when I say that. I just want to be very clear that I'm not picking on any marriage style. I'm not picking on people for being in marriages like that. There are marriages where one person or the other is more of a leader, and the other person is not. Totally. I'm not picking on people who have a marriage like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about like the homogenous experience that you're talking about, that a lot of people are expected to just tolerate no matter what. Like, people like you don't have a choice is the point. Like, your situation was not the result of choice, it was the result of expectation. So sorry, I just needed to put that in there for the chat. Keep going.
No, I totally agree, and I think that's why I say it's so bizarre, because now that I'm in a marriage where my primary source of like comfort or reassurance when I'm experiencing like severe symptoms of this illness that I have, because it's not my husband, and I grew up expecting to be almost handed off to someone who would support my every need the way that my parents do, whether that's financial, emotional, mental, whatever, and that's not being fulfilled. I feel like I'm absolutely crazy. I feel like I'm like, there's so much that there's so many expectations in my brain that I'm having to like to break down and recognize, like, this person cannot be my everything. And when I put that type of expectation on him, like, everything bad happens. And no person can live up to that. No person can be all things all the time, all at once. But that's what I expected.
Right. Okay, so that was issue number one, is that you're going through some medical issues, and your parents are the type that expect you to just have all of your issues resolved within your own marriage. And while we're there, I'll say that at the defense of boomers, and I don't go here often defending boomers, but at the defense of boomers, just to be completely fair, I will say a lot of these boomers are like that because they grew up in those circumstances. And for the vast majority of Western history, a lot of people grew up under these expectations. A lot of people this is not a new trend. It's not just like the boomers invented this idea and now the millennials are freaking out and everybody else is trying to revolt. That's not what's going on. This is a very deep-seated thing. So it's that's why it's so problematic, because you got a lot of history behind these ideas. And yet we're in this point of history where technology is confronting a lot of traditions, and we're able to live in new ways that we've never been able to live before, and so it's naturally controversial. But I'm just trying to be fair, and I want to get on to the second point of that you brought up, and I apologize that you there was so much there, and I really do want to cover everything that you just talked about, because I feel like it's a great conversation. So can you remind me what the second point in your journey was? It was the medical thing in your marriage, and your parents expected you to resolve it within your marriage. What was the second part? And I think there was about 4 parts, so we'll get to all of them.
Thanks. I think there was the first point I think I made was mostly just that I chose marriage really young because I wanted to keep myself protected from the church and kind of the aggressive tactics that it had. And I mean, we left for a reason, and so leaving that, the church, the Americanized, Westernized church culture, which I do not demonize, just like you, I think, when I go to church, when I do go to church, which is seldom, I look around, I see a lot of people who love God the way that they love God, and I think that's beautiful. I don't look at that and think that God is displeased.
Right.
It's just not something that I connect with. American Westernized, commodified in that way is just not something that I spiritually connect with. But yeah, coming to that conclusion and recognizing, like, the church has this Americanized idea of church has had such an impact on me and my peers, to the point where it means that I've made huge life decisions like marriage as like a protection rather than something that I wanted to do without like a gun to my head type of thing.
Right.
And I'm very lucky that the person I married is such a quality human being. I could have married someone far, far worse.
Well, it sounds like you love your husband. Can you remind me what the second point was, though? I'm struggling to remember what the second beat point in your story was.
The second point, I think I had asked kind of, do you expect the same thing, or like what expectations do you have with your wife, or your relationships and things like that?
Well, I think that was the last point, wasn't it? Oh, man, I wish I could just rewind the video and listen to you again.
There was I'm trying to think.
It was a dense thing. There was a lot of stuff in there.
I know. I'm not trying to overshare or anything, by the way. Like, I know that, this is a bunch of strangers on the internet. I'm not trying to, like, trauma dump or anything on here.
Right.
I'm really...
I apologize. I can't remember everything. I was trying my hardest to track, but I was also trying to... This is a very new thing. I'm trying to figure out how to...
Okay.
Yeah. But, I remember you saying that that your parents had all these expectations around you. Now, let me ask you this. Maybe this gets us back on track. How's your husband? Does your husband expect you to...
No.
Well, what's he like in all this?
No. My husband's expectations for me in general is like he can't fix everything, and that he expects me to kind of diversify my needs if they're not getting met in my house emotionally anyway.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things he's like, I can't help you here. I don't know how to help you.
Mm-hmm.
How can we find someone for you that can help you? Can you call a friend? Can you call,
I remember what it was.
I'm not used to that.
You said you had rushed into your marriage. Do you really believe that? Do you feel like you rushed into your marriage in a detrimental way, or was that just like was that just a quick way of saying you got married really fast?
Both, but also neither. I think we dated for a year and a half before we got married or got engaged. But there was also there was also my husband's African American and I'm white, so there's also racial prejudice within my family, which is a whole other topic. So we dated for far longer than my parents were aware of, and so there was urgency because I knew I had to get married to be protected from
That's
my
what
church.
it was. That was the other thing.
And,
now we have the 4 beat points. Let me just recap so we don't forget. We had number 1, you rushed in, you were expected in your marriage to fix things within your marriage, and your parents expect you. That's an expectation from your parents. Number 2 was that you rushed into marriage. Number 3 was it was what you just said. And now I'm let's see, it was that oh man, what did you just say? I apologize.
Was it the health issues? That's okay.
No, it was that oh man, I'm so ashamed.
The racial, potentially?
No, it was that there was some patriarchy stuff we were touching on that was important. What was it? It was like this patriarchy stuff. I can't remember the specifics. I'm so sorry.
Where there was, that's okay. No, that there was just a lot of, maybe if I say stuff, it'll jog your memory.
Yeah.
There was a lot of a lot of property focused verbiage. So you're handing your daughter off.
Does your husband respect you?
What, does he respect me?
Yeah.
Deeply.
Deeply.
Deeply respects me.
Do you love him deeply?
Yeah. I do.
Do you guys have kids?
No, we've been married 3 years.
3 years. No kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely waiting a while to have kids with my health issues. They're affected by it, so I kind of have to be really diligent and intentional about planning kids.
Yeah. The chat's telling me the chat's telling me I need pen and paper next time, but that would be so many trees for the amount of callers we're taking. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to. There've only been a couple of callers who've had multifaceted stories like yours, and I'm sincerely trying to track because your story is very important, and I will undoubtedly. This story is a story that I will probably come back to as I've had some time to digest this. And think about it. I will probably revisit this at the beginning of another live stream as I've had some time to think about it.
Yeah.
But, my initial impressions are that it does sound like you got married under some expectations. It does sound like you're under a lot. So what's the real issue? Is it that you're not feeling supported in your marriage? Is it just that your parents expect you to be supported elsewhere and that's hard for you? What's the real issue? And I'm not trying to diminish the fact that you're having medical issues because that's serious in and of itself. No. But what would make this a beneficial call tonight? What can we do?
I'm trying to find a litmus test and kind of compare what I'm experiencing to a different situation or a different marriage or a different relationship. It doesn't even have to be a marriage, and say, like, what should my expectations be? And how much of this is stuff that is what's the right word? Because I don't want to say wrong. I don't think this is a question of right and wrong. but how much of this is like something I should rethink? How much of this is something, what are like flaws in my thinking or flaws in my schema that I haven't noticed yet? Like as I'm talking these things out, are there things in the way that the expectations I might have or thought processes I might be having that I could examine deeper and figure out if I want them there or not?
Right. And I want to thank Offcore in the chat for reminding the specific flavor of patriarchy. I was forgetting. Offcore says that it was the part of your marriage for protection. That's what I was missing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
We could talk about that for hours probably. That seems really dense.
Yeah.
That is super dense. Thank you, Offcore, for that, for jogging my memory on that. See, this is why I don't need pen and paper. I got the chat. I stand with the chat, people. Thank you, Offcore.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so, yeah, the marriage for protection thing, sorry to get off track here, but the marriage for protection thing is really interesting because it's it's as if you need protection. It's as if you can't protect yourself. It's as if,
Yeah.
And do you believe?
It's as if there is a threat.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that you need that protection, or have you? What do you think of that?
I still believe that. Yes, I definitely still believe that.
You believe you need protection?
From church, yes.
And you believe your husband is the one to do that?
Not my husband, but marriage.
Your marriage? Oh, that's an interesting way to see it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, your marriage is your thing.
So it's very, So like because I'm married, people will bother me less.
I see.
People will question me less. People will respect me more.
Right.
People won't kind of get in my business.
Right. They respect your time, and they're not going to bother you with trivial questions.
Yeah. Well, more than that, the type of dynamic I experienced with the church was, we own you, we own your time, we own your finances, all of this is ours.
Right.
And the only way out of it is if you die or you become this like idea of marriage, biblically speaking, from the way that my church specifically interpreted it, was that your like first and foremost like obligation was to your marriage and then to the church. And so
can I ask how old you are?
Church, they would assume it as family obligation or marriage obligation. Right.
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 23.
23. Okay. Are you content in your marriage? Honestly. This is anonymous. Are you honestly content? And I'm not doubting that you are. I'm just like that. That seems like a cornerstone question to ask. Are you happy?
78% of the time.
That's pretty good. That's almost Pareto principle. Yeah. That's almost 80-20.
That's passing for sure.
That's good.
But yeah, about 78% of the time. The other 22% is usually when I'm is actually always when I'm experiencing severe pain or discomfort, and he can't caregive or comfort, or doesn't.
Or doesn't. Is he not there for you sometimes?
So the love languages, the 5 love languages, my love language is like words of affirmation. I love that shit. Can I cut some here? I'm sorry.
Sure, whatever.
I love that shit. It's my favorite. I love it a lot. He's not convinced that words of affirmation are always necessarily healthy, because he's seen it used by my family and by the church to kind of manipulate people into doing what you want. And so he sees it as like a stroking the ego, and he's afraid that I'll get too attached to what people say or think of me. And so oftentimes he'll comfort me in other ways, or try to pacify me in other ways, if that makes sense.
Is it? I'm not. This might be a totally off base question, but I'm only asking it because you didn't say 80% of the time your marriage is happy. So maybe you were only 2% off by my threshold. So maybe I'm just Looney Tunes. But my question is it possible that that your marriage became your religion when you let it go, when you let go of the religion?
Yeah. Very likely. I guess I had never thought of that. That's very likely.
Right. It's pretty common with a lot of people who grew up hardcore in religion and then let go of it. Their marriage or their relationship becomes the religion when there's nothing left. And I ask that because if that's the case, then you've still got some unpacking to do. That journey's not over yet. You've still got some unpacking to do. Because you're not really out of it. You're not really out of the religion. You just put the religion on your partner, which is not going to last.
And I transferred it over.
That's not going to, you can't put, you said it yourself, you can't put that kind of expectation on someone.
Yeah, that's definitely something I have considered. I think maybe not definitely the behaviors of religion.
Right.
So like self-sacrifice and all of that stuff for sure transferred over to my marriage. In fact, there's often times where my husband will point out that I'm pushing myself to the limit and he's not asking me to. And I'll like supersede that and be like, but this is how you show love.
Right.
I'll be in pain that day and still, get up and make dinner, and he'll come out in the kitchen and be like, I didn't ask you to do this, don't do this. And I'm shocked that he would say that. That's a really good point. I guess I hadn't ever thought about my reasons for that type of behavior.
Right.
There even is some of that. This person should meet all of your needs that also transfers over to the church culture I experienced. You shouldn't need any friends outside of this church. You shouldn't live with anybody else. You shouldn't befriend anybody else. You shouldn't invest anywhere else. Like this is all you need. Was 100% the dialogue that was kind of fed to me.
Do you have any friends who, this is actually from the chat, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I saw this question and I thought it was relevant. Who said this? I got to scroll up to find it. I can say it, but I want to give the person's name because it was a great question. Somebody asked if you had any friends who did not grow up like you did, who might be able to be a good listening ear for you. And guys, I'm sorry, the chat's going too fast. I can't find who said it. Who said it? Someone in the chat said it. Sorry, it went too fast. But is that question relevant to you? Do you have anybody that is?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I do. I have quite a few friends. Most of them don't know a lot of this because I kind of already feel ostracized from a lot of the people my age because not most of them aren't married, and oftentimes I pretend I'm not. Oftentimes I just say my boyfriend or anything, not to shirk the commitment that I have, but mostly just so that people aren't very intimidated by me or feel really distant from me. I've noticed that a lot of my peers, especially women, will treat me really different when they find out I'm married. So I haven't shared a lot of this with people my age, but I most certainly could. And I have several friends who are much older than me that I've talked to about this who haven't grown up religiously or are religious.
Okay. Well, that's good. You have some support that's unbiased and can kind of see this. It's not fair calling anyone unbiased, really. Everyone has their biases. But, someone that's that gets where you are and sees you for what your life is objectively, and there's no judgment. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's good to have that. And it's nice to be able to talk out a lot of this stuff with with you and with the chat and everything. Again, I'm not trying to trauma dump or
No,
overshare
that's
anything
what
like
this
that.
is.
I just do
Trauma
think
dump, please. Maybe I'll rename this, rebrand, trauma dump. Doesn't have quite the ring to it, but trauma dump.
I tune in.
That sounds a little extreme.
But no, I think these are such like complicated issues that I haven't been able to share with people who are interested in having the conversation, interested in like being able to. They just seem like really complicated issues for a 23-year-old. So a lot of times I feel kind of overwhelmed by it. So it's nice to be able to like talk about it and stuff.
Right. Well, is there anything else? Well, we've been talking for about 30 minutes. Is there? Do you feel like we've covered the bases, or was that helpful, or what else is there?
Yeah, I'm definitely super grateful. I'm going to be watching this VOD later and psychoanalyzing everything that I said and you said in the chat said. So I'm grateful for the time that you did give, and thanks for listening.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. And definitely revisit the chat, because there was so much in there that I didn't get to shed light on that will be good for you to see. Thanks for calling.
Yeah,
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, no
good
problem.
Luck.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Wow. That one got to me. There was stuff there I'll still be thinking about for a while. Thank you for calling in, whoever you were. I'm going to turn the calls back on. I will say, I, in about 10 minutes, need to run and take a quick break. Let's just say, to be completely honest, my childcare fell through for tonight. My kids are upstairs, and I have one that is still potty training. We'll leave it at that. So in about 10 minutes after this next caller, I'm going to run upstairs and take a 5-minute break. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Next caller. Here we go. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi.
What would you like to talk about?
Julian, how are you? So, you don't realize when you call in, and you answer, you've tried a few times, and it's kind of jarring when you actually answer. So I started listening. I don't know when you started doing this, but I caught the last one you did on replay, this anonymous thing, and it was really interesting. So I just thought, well, I'll try to call. You know, when I was listening the last time, I'm probably someone from a very different demographic than you typically have gotten. I'm not exactly a boomer, but I'm pushing up there.
What's your issue?
It sounds like what's that?
What's your issue?
Well, I've been hearing a lot of your callers who have who are the ages of my children and who are struggling a lot with anxiety, depression. There was one caller that was, shared a really moving story about an attempted suicide and his issues with his parent. And I happen to be in a situation where I'm the parent of a child or an adult child, a 20-year-old, who a month ago attempted suicide. And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
I've sort of been reeling from all of that and trying to figure out how to adjust and structure my life around this new set of facts in our family.
How are you doing?
Of what my son is dealing with, and
how are you doing?
Okay. I don't know. It was a lot of numbness at first. Thankfully, it was an attempt, and it wasn't a very effective attempt. So I'm grateful for that, for sure. But the intention was there, and so I heard the message loud and clear, wake up. And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
It's been really interesting. thank you. Yeah, it's been really interesting for me to hear a lot of your callers who are my son's age, maybe ish, are dealing with some of the same things because on the other side of it, I have to first of all just say to anybody else listening that who is in my son's shoes, like there is someone on the other side, the parent who, while they may not seem supportive enough, or maybe they've even done things that have exacerbated, you know, things, they really do love you, and maybe they don't know how, because that's where I'm finding myself at. How do I support him? Like,
I
I
have no
want
doubt your
him to
son
know I
loves
love
you or your
him
daughter loves
more
you.
than anything.
Right. I was just sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying. I have no doubt that your child loves you. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. But I have no doubt that they love you. I think that's the tragedy of what suicide is. A lot of people don't understand where people are when they are suicidal. It's one of the most misunderstood things that there is. And yeah, suicide is usually portrayed as this really selfish act. And, it's people who are threatening suicide or attempting suicide are in really dark places. And they're really confused. And
Yeah.
I do want to hear more about your situation. Can you tell me a little bit more? And I feel like this call might go on for a little bit, which is great, because I do want to make this. It sounds like you've called in for a reason, so I want to make sure that the chat and I can give you the support you need. But I don't know if you heard the announcement I made just before taking your call that I will need to go tend to my children in about 5 minutes. So in about 5 minutes, if we're still going, do I have your permission to put you on hold and come right back after about 2 minutes? Is that okay?
Oh, sure, of course.
Okay, so please go on.
Yeah, so I guess where I am, quite honestly, I have had suicidal thoughts. I don't have any judgment toward my son or bad feelings toward my son about what he's going through at all. Um, I think everybody, if they're being honest, has, at least to some degree, if they've lived long enough, been there. So I definitely understand that. And I,
Have you
on a
attempted?
mental level, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. And maybe it's an insensitive question. It may be, but I'm just trying to understand because it sounds like you get where your child is, and I'm just curious if you attempted it or if it's just a thought that passed through your head before.
Oh no, I never attempted it. I don't think
Okay.
I'm at that level, but there's that feeling of just wanting things to stop, and
Right.
I do get that.
Right.
And I'm just in a place where now it's like I waffle between being terrified that he's going to do it again, so like I overreact to everything that if he says I'm sad today, I'm like, oh, you want me to come over? Or what can we do? Or like, and
Oh.
it kind of would drive me crazy and probably drive him crazy. But I want to be supportive, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know who to be.
So it sounds like your kid is out of the house. Sounds like they're on their own. Is that right?
They're living, apart from me.
Okay. Well, I believe your question was how. It sounds like you're trying to understand kids today, as a parent. Sounds like you're trying to figure out what drives kids today to these places in hopes of better understanding and connecting with your kid. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a really big part of what I'm having a difficult time connecting with. I grew up in the 80s,
You grew up in
and
the 80s.
like, it's just a different demographic. And I realized that my parents also looked at me and said, oh my God, I don't understand these kids. And strangely enough, I'm in that situation now. But of course, I have a really strong desire to. I'm just not sure, how to connect with that experience in a way that would be helpful.
Yeah, you just touched on something that's really important, I think. I feel like I hear that from so many parents and kids that my parents don't get me or I don't get my kids. And I've always just felt like isn't that what we hope for when we become parents? Like when we become parents, don't we hope for our kids to have it differently than we had it growing up? Don't we all grow up with things we wish we were different? Don't we all hope for different things for our kids than we had growing up? And then why do we expect as parents that means that we'll perfectly understand our kids? Isn't the hope that we don't understand our kids? Isn't the hope that our kids grow up and become different people than we are to an extent? And so,
sure.
So I'm, I guess the thought is that I don't know if it's helpful, but I guess I'm just trying to extend some encouragement and comfort that just because you don't understand what's going on in your kid's head doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Maybe that means you're the perfect parent. Maybe that means you're a great parent. We may never get to the bottom. You may never get to the bottom of what's going on in your kid's head that drives them to these places. Maybe you never will. But I'm just trying to, and in the chat, I just want to, I'll get the chat going here while we're talking so this can be useful, because the chat, I'm not sure how long you have been watching these, but the chat has been an amazing resource for people like you who've called in and shared really difficult stories. So to the chat, if you guys have any common, if you guys have any ideas for this parent and bridging the gap between her, I'm guessing do you identify as a boomer? Is that a fair question?
I don't think I'm that old.
You said you grew up in the 80s. I don't know if that means you were born in the 80s or you were born in the 70s, or what does that mean?
No, I'm 47. I'm pushing 50. So
Okay.
I'm like in between.
Okay. You're like, I guess.
I'm an old Xer.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, to the chat, if you guys have any, if any of you have late Gen X parents, not meaning that they're late as in they're not here anymore, but just like, they're not quite boomers, not quite Gen Xers on that hybrid zone. If any of you grew up with parents like that and felt misunderstood, if you have any helpful thoughts to leave in the chat, that would be awesome. And I do have to run upstairs really quickly for just a second in a minute, and I realize that's completely unprofessional. I'm sorry. This whole thing's really loose in my childcare for tonight, so it'll just be a second. But I do want to say that I think that there's a lot going on for kids today that no other generation has had to grow up with, and I feel like as what they call a geriatric millennial, which is what they call me, as someone who's not quite a Gen Xer, not quite a millennial. I'm someone who grew up without the internet. I grew up without GPS, and so I kind of grew up in two different worlds. My whole life has been kind of characterized by two different worlds, and the point is that I do feel like one of my that has been the reason for a lot of my conviction today for my own kids and a lot of other kids growing up today, which is that kids are growing up with so much input today that we've never had before. I mean, our children today are this wild experiment that no one asked to give them. It's this crazy level of comfort we live in today, where we are surrounded by all these modern conveniences, and the internet is this crazy force that a lot of us take for granted because it's mostly a positive force, and the invisible threats of the internet just don't come to mind very often because they're invisible to us mostly. Yeah. A lot of that's because of regulation and prematurity of regulation today and things like that. And I think a lot of this stuff is yet to be. I think it will become better, but because of where we are, this generation of kids is under so much more than a lot of us parents can even imagine. Yeah,
for sure. And it's like we have no reference point to know how to help them because we didn't have that.
And so if everyone can bear with us for 2 to 3 minutes while I run upstairs real quick, I'm gonna put you on hold. If you can hang on here with me, I don't know your name and I don't want to know it, but if you can hang on here with me for 2 to 3 minutes, I'm gonna put the call on hold. I'll leave the stream live so everyone knows I'm still here. If new viewers come in, if the chat can help me just tell viewers that we're in a quick intermission, and we'll be right back. We will pick up from where we left off with this sweet caller, and I'll be right back. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Are you still with me?
I am.
Excellent. Thank you to the chat for being patient. And thank you on the phone for being patient. Duty calls.
Sure.
Okay, so we were talking about, for those who are maybe just joining us, quick recap. You were calling about you have a child, not quite a child. For lack of a better term, would you be comfortable telling me how your child, is your child a boy? How do they identify? The boy, girl? What are they?
Yeah, he's a boy. He's 20.
That will simplify the conversation. So your son, when did you notice? Sorry, I was recapping for the chat. Your son recently had a suicide attempt, and you were calling as a parent, trying to figure out how something like this could happen, and how you can be there better for your child, how you can understand your child better. And I think that's a really amazing question. I guess I can say that I wish more parents had this level of interest in relating to their kids. I think it's a really sweet thing you're trying to do for your son. I think it's amazing. And I'm so glad you called in. And I'm even more thankful that you were just so patient with me. So thank you for that. So when did you notice that things were not well with your son? And can you just share a little bit more about the background of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, my son actually reached out to me about a year earlier to say that he had really been struggling. He was a 2020 graduate, which uh, that's got to be the worst year in the history of the millennium to graduate high school. And uh, he immediately went to try college, even though college was just ridiculous at that time. And it essentially resulted in, after almost half a year of being completely isolated at home, it resulted in him moving to college and being isolated alone in a dorm room in a new city with nobody around that he knew and couldn't really socialize. And so it really just was not anything like what I hoped his college experience would be.
Right.
And it was a very difficult semester for him. So near the end of the semester, he started expressing that he was really having trouble with his mental health and just really struggling and wanted to drop out. And so, I did the normal parent thing, like trying to talk him out of it a little bit, making sure he knew what he was doing, trying to get in there and figure it out. But he basically said, look, this is what I need and this is what I'm doing. So I said, okay, well, it's your decision. It makes sense. The world is crazy, and that happens. And then about a month later, he reached out and said, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what I meant when I said it wasn't good for my mental health. I said, okay. And so he started talking about how he had been self-harming for a while.
Mm.
And
Did he say for how
he
long?
had just struggled. He didn't really say how long, but probably within the year before.
Okay.
Cutting himself, he said, and just struggling with intense anxiety and depression. And so that was like a lot to take in, and that hit me pretty hard. And so, I immediately started getting on track of like, let's find you a therapist, let's get you support. And that was kind of 6 months of back and forth, because with depression and anxiety, like initiating and motivation to do things are not there. And I didn't live with him. He actually lives with his dad right now after he moved out of college. And his dad and I are divorced. So
I see.
anyway, it was like I kept encouraging him, giving him numbers, asking him if he wanted me to call and make an appointment, and he said no. But then months would go by and he hadn't made an appointment. And this is the part where it's like I struggle to relate.
Can he afford therapy, or were you offering to pay for him, or what was the reason that he was avoiding therapy, do you think?
I think it's part of depression and anxiety. I mean, it
So the
can
finances
be
weren't a variable.
debilitating. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just trying to understand if finances were a variable, if there was some
Oh,
hindrance for him not going to therapy.
not in this particular case. No,
Okay.
I was offering to make it happen. So I really think it was just sort of grappling with his mental health state and making himself do it.
Has he had therapy
long
before?
story short,
Sorry, carry on with your story. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get to the bottom of some questions I have, but I want to hear the rest of your story first. Keep going. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I can be long-winded, so I'll keep it short. But yeah, long story short is I finally jumped in and said, "Hey, let me just get you through the door," like,
Right.
and let me just take over, make this happen, and then all you have to do is show up. So we finally got there, and that was about 6 months before his suicide attempt. So he had been seeing a counselor for about 6 months.
I see.
So that's kind of how it evolved to that point.
Well, this is an extreme story. I mean, we're talking about suicide, and I just want to be very clear that, of course, I'm not a psychologist, as if I even need to say that. I'm not a therapist. This is just a safe place for people to call in with difficult stories like you've just shared and to get support and ideas. And the chat, I'm not sure if you've been following, but the chat has sent a bunch of ideas that have been worth looking at, in my opinion. So after the call, maybe you can revisit those. But, to share a little bit from my own experience, I do believe that a lot of kids today don't understand what the role of therapy is. And a lot of kids today are opposed to therapy in the way that boomers were, in the mid-century. A lot, I think there was this short window of time where people kind of understood the usefulness of therapy. And now it's kind of, I'm afraid it's coming into this place where people don't understand what it's for anymore. And my personal belief, the reason I get therapy when I'm going through things is because, I think the role of therapy is it's conversation. Like the way civilization has evolved, we don't have, we used to operate on band society. We used to be bloodline. We used to travel in bloodlines, and we used to trust everyone that we lived with, and we weren't exposed to strangers really in our, relationships anyways. Like we weren't used to, meeting new people and welcoming new relationships. And so I think that the reason that therapy is valuable is because it's a listening ear and someone who's qualified, someone who cares, someone with empathy, and someone who has ideas. And I wonder if your son sees therapy in that way, or if he's more of an avoidant type, or if maybe he's looking for some level of control, and that's why he's self-harming. Does any of that sound relevant?
Yeah, I mean, he is an avoidant type, although at the same time, he is really open to therapy. I think that just initiating, getting it on the rails was really difficult for him initially. And yeah, so I mean, ever since his attempt, he was hospitalized for about a week after that in a mental health hospital, which honestly I think was a really wonderful thing for him.
Great.
I think it sort of served as a reset. And ever since then, he's on medication now, which I'm not honestly a huge fan of, but I'm less a fan of him leaving this earth, so I'm just fine with him being on medication at the moment. But I know that medication is not a silver bullet, that you have to do the work. And
That's right.
so he does seem like he is willing to do the work and eager, and almost like he's had a reset point since that then. So I'm very grateful for that. It's just, this thing where it does seem to be a generational thing where, like, when and I've had meltdown moments, trust me.
We
When
all
I've
do.
had moments like that, after I have my moment, I my inclination is just to plow through, drive hard, and like do something to make the situation different. And I don't know if it's generational or personality based, but my son, and I have a few sons, so I can sort of compare them all. My sons, I can group them together. Um, they all seem to not be like that. They're more like, meh, you know, to use a word, meh,
Hmm.
uh, and just lackadaisical about tackling an issue. And that's where I have my disconnect. Like, I want to help him. I don't want to push and make him feel pressure, but at the same time, I'm like, why aren't you doing something?
Hmm.
So, but I don't want to do that to cause him more anxiety. So I really struggle with knowing how to help motivate him or encourage him
Yeah.
in his journey.
Well, I'm so glad that you're calling in with this. I am certainly uh, out of my league in weighing in on this, but I hope that between the chat and I, that we can at least give you some encouragement and some inspiration on what might be some good ideas for next steps, especially since he's avoiding therapy altogether as it stands. So maybe this is a good first step. But it does make me wonder, again, going back to the idea that a lot of kids today just don't appreciate what we're growing up in. They don't appreciate therapy. They don't appreciate the level of convenience we live with today. They don't understand what America means as an idea on the global stage and why that's valuable. A lot of kids just disregard what America is as capitalism unabashed, and obviously it's much more than that. And it's this is a really dense thing you're up against. It makes me wonder how your son grew up. Like, where in the is he the oldest? Is he the youngest? Sounds like maybe he might be the youngest or a middle child. And it makes me wonder what kind of worldview he was raised with. And again, it sounds like this has not been an issue with your other sons. It sounds like, so it probably isn't worldview in my guess. But yeah, maybe we just start with birth order. Where is he in the birth order?
Yeah. Uh, uh, you could say he's the youngest.
Okay.
And I do want to clarify, he's actually not avoiding therapy.
Oh,
He was avoidant to get into it at first, but right now he's really embracing it. And for the past,
great.
like,
Great.
yeah. So,
Great.
but
I'm
that
so
was an
relieved.
issue initially when I was, trying to get him in with the therapist,
Okay.
prior. But yeah, and
Great.
I do think that he has a pretty, I think I call it a healthy level of cynicism about sort of the darker side of our society and everything and where he fits in. And of course, at 20 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you're still trying to figure that all out. Like, where do you fit?
This is the age group I'm really
And
concerned about. These kids that are not kids anymore, that are just becoming adults, and a lot of these kids are being raised with unhelpful messages about what they're growing up in, and I'm not sure where that stems from. This is not a show where we're going to discuss where that comes from, but I am really concerned about a lot of these kids your son's age, and what kind of information they're growing up with. And it's not to say that your son's a conspiracy theorist or something like that. I'm not saying that at all. But my point is that just like there's a lot of disenfranchisement happening right now, and how's your relationship with your
yeah,
son? Does he? You guys have a good relationship? Are you close?
yeah, we do. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I mean, he opened up to me about a lot of the stuff. He even told me the day. Actually, that's something I carry is a lot of just. I mean, every mother carries mom guilt, but I have a higher degree of it in relation to what happens because, he reached out to me the day before his attempt, and he just said, "I'm really struggling today. I'm having lots of, you know, bad thoughts, and maybe I just feel like maybe I shouldn't be here. I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore." And I sort of rushed over to his house and obviously when you get a message like that from your son, and my point is that he's very open with me, and I've told him, you can tell me anything. If you need to get stuff like that off your chest, tell me.
Right.
Don't
That's
tell
great.
no one,
That's amazing.
And so we have a great relationship, but I went over and he said, I think I don't need to be alone tonight. And so I said, come over, and he went to work. I said, after work, I'll pick you up and you can just spend the night. You won't be alone. Because I've been there. I've had those thoughts, and I've had friends that I could call and say, I just don't want to be alone right now. And it got me through. So that night when I picked him up, he was like, yeah, I was overreacting. It's okay, no big deal. Yeah, I'll just go home. And so I dropped him off at home. Well, it was the next morning when he made his attempt. So, of course, I'm thinking, oh, I did the wrong thing. I shouldn't have taken him home. I should have made him stay with me. I just deal with a lot of that as a result. I mean, this was only a month ago, so I'm still sort of reeling from all of that. But
Two-part question. With like a kind of an umbrella theme here. Is he exposed? Are you aware of any toxicity he's exposed to, either from his dad or from his school? Because these are, you mentioned you were divorced. We don't need to get into those specifics of that, but I am wondering, like, does he have a good fatherly figure as a role model in his life, or on the other side of it sounds like he's exposed to some kind of toxicity. I hate that word because it's so overused, but it sounds like he's got some kind of bad impression in his life of what his place in the world is, and it makes me wonder, does that come from his school? Is he getting some bad ideas from not necessarily the school itself, but from the campus and the kids there? Because there's a lot of bad ideas floating around with kids these days, and I'll be the first one to say it. I think they're going to be very short-lived. I think a lot of these kids are going to grow up and realize that a lot of these popular ideas that are floating around are just not sustainable. And I'm not going to weigh in on which specific ideas I'm talking about, but because that's besides the point. But there's a lot of polarization on college campuses right now, and so I'm wondering, are you aware of any toxicity he's exposed to on his school campus, or do you think it could be coming from his dad as a role model?
yeah, no, I don't think so. He's not in college anymore. He went for the one semester, but he's dropped out, so that's not an element of his life right now.
Okay.
And quite honestly, no, his father is not like a negative influence at all. He's more sort of passive and not very super engaged,
Okay.
but not negatively engaged or spreading negative ideas. I think my
What is his
son's
dad?
always dealt with
Sorry, keep going. I cut you off.
self-esteem issues, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. Please go on.
No, I was just saying I think he's dealt with self-esteem issues, and I don't know if this is me overly blaming myself for it, or if I should blame myself more. But I was the harder parent. I was the one that like pushed people's nose to the grindstone and got things done and made sure they got things done. And I was kind of the one that was always like, I don't know. I look back and wonder if I was too hard on him.
Have you shared that with your son? That you wonder about that, and have you gotten his feedback on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I've shared a lot with him since his dad and I divorced when he was 13, which is, I know, terrible timing.
There's no good time for
And
divorce. I'm divorced. I know
the
that.
divorce.
Right.
Yeah, and it was not pleasant. But I tried to make the best of it, but I'm not gonna say that I handled everything
Right.
awesomely. But since he's 18, 19, 20, I have opened up a little more to him about that time, not in any way to like give him information that would be harmful, but just to sort of explain like that I always tried to do what I thought was going to be the very best for him in that scenario of having to go through a divorce. But I can look back and see that some of the things I did may have been an overreaction, or maybe I was too hard because I was scared that he wouldn't get what he needed from his dad, because he and his brother stayed with his dad, not with me, which I know is unconventional, but there were reasons that seemed to make sense at the time. But
I see. So you mentioned his dad was passive. I guess when I said toxicity earlier, I didn't mean that that was specifically like negative ideas coming into someone's head, like being fed bad ideas. But I'm just wondering, like, does your son have a good work ethic? Does he understand? Is he seeing? I mean, you mentioned you have. It sounds like you have all sons. So I'm wondering, like, as a guy myself, you look to your dad when you look to the parent you most identify with. Most of the times, there's exceptions to everything, obviously, but if you're I don't know you, I don't know your husband. All I know is what you've told me, obviously, so I'm just fishing. But I'm wondering, like, does your son have a good role model in his dad? Does his dad have a good work ethic? Is that something that, or is that something that you might be able to, not compensate for, but like, step up and be a good example for, with your son somehow?
yeah, I always did try.
Sounds like you did, yeah.
My ex-husband did not have a good work ethic, and
Okay.
I'm a workaholic, so that was the dynamic
I see.
between the two of us. And so after things happened, and the boys were with their dad, and I was basically supporting everyone. I took that on as a really heavy commitment, and I wanted to be that good example to my sons, sort of in lieu of what I knew their father was doing, which, don't get me wrong, he's a wonderful father, he's a wonderful, like, person and nurturer, but he's not a worker bee.
I see.
And so I wanted to demonstrate that, but I think that's some of what came out when I was really hard on them, because I didn't want them to look at their dad and take on some of his lackadaisical habits or whatever in life. Like, yeah, everybody else will take responsibility for me, and
Right.
I'll just float around in life. I really did try to instill that in them, but sometimes I worry that I did too much, especially in terms of my son that we're talking about, because he has so much anxiety, and I feel like maybe I put that on him. Maybe I put too much pressure on him in my fear that he wouldn't take enough responsibility for himself.
For those who are just joining, we're sharing difficult experiences in this live stream, and we're speaking with someone whose son has had a recent suicide attempt, and we're trying to use this call and the chat for some ideas on some positive next steps that might be beneficial. And I want to thank you so much for sharing. I don't know your name because this is all anonymous, intentionally, obviously, but I want to thank you for sharing what you've shared. And it does make me wonder to what extent. You said you've already said that you've tried talking with your son about these things, and you mentioned that you were the more type A person in the marriage growing up, and that you did kind of try to counterbalance some of your ex-husband's lackadaisicalness with some better work ethic, and you tried to compensate for some of that for the sake of your kids. And I don't know to what extent you did that, but I did grow up in a very I grew up in a house with a lot of polarization. So it does make me wonder to what extent you've had that conversation with your son. To what extent does he understand the level of empathy you're prepared to give him in that conversation. To what extent does he feel comfortable, do you think, going there with you in conversation and sharing what his real experience was? And again, there's no judge. I'm not judging you. I have no idea. I'm just asking because we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, we're really open with each other, but it's and I'm open about talking to him and asking him like, how was that for you? And I don't know if it's his age or just his level of sort of understanding himself, but he have a he has a I don't know, he's always been very easygoing about things, like yeah, everything's fine. Well, obviously everything wasn't fine if
Right.
if he attempted suicide. So there's obviously a lack of ability to communicate openly about what his real experience is. But I think you're making a really important point that it's so important to just have open, non-judgmental communication, to allow for the space, just like you are with this forum that you're conducting here, which I think is wonderful, but to allow for a space for somebody to share, their experience with things. And I think as a parent, that is probably what my next steps need to be, is just delving deeper into sharing with him and letting him share with me how he processed certain things,
Right.
particularly with me as his mom in his
Yes.
childhood.
Well, I'm glad you think that
Maybe that's
might be relevant.
for both of us.
I'm glad that I'm not just wasting your
Mhm.
time. And
No,
I do
way too much stuff. So.
I do wonder. Again, this is coming from someone who grew up in a very specific house, so I'm not projecting onto you my experience, but I am just, I mentioned what I did because I do think it can go a long way if you have a parent that's willing to sit down with you and say something like, look, like, I'm willing to be the jackass parent if you tell me that's what I was. I just want to, like, own up for whatever it was that is causing this. If I had any part in it, I want you to tell me. Like, these are things that I think a
Yeah.
lot of kids wish they could hear from their parents. I think it could do a lot of good. And so I just want to be really clear that it's not judgment. I'm not judging you. I know nothing about you other than what you've shared. But I'm happy to hear that you think that maybe that might be a positive next step. And I really do hope that you and your son find some closure on this, and that your son gets the help he needs in counseling. And maybe you two go to counseling together. I've heard that it can be really beneficial a lot of times for parents and kids to go to counseling together to work out things that maybe are unresolved.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say, like, because, like I said, I've listened to many other callers from the times you've done this before, and it's amazing how common these issues are right now
Right.
for many people, not just young people, but specifically young people.
Huge
And
problem.
I guess since since you have listeners and I'm on the phone with you, I'll just say that, like, you're not alone. Nobody's alone, and there really are a lot of people out there who can understand what you're going through. I know it's scary to, like, reach out and say I'm struggling, but um, one thing that my son said, and I'll share this maybe for the benefit of your callers, uh, since his attempt, he said it was a huge eye opener to him to see how many people came to the ER.
Mm.
It was like he was so stuck inside his own loop, his own mental loop of negative thoughts, that he just didn't realize how many people loved him and how many people cared so much. And it really is true that so many people care about you, even when you feel like you're all alone. And that was really inspiring to hear from my son. I was grateful to hear that he felt that way. And I just want to say that to anyone else who feels that way, that, yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think you're 100% right. I think a lot of the world is under so much right now. And it's such a crazy time. And so it's the main reason I've started this new format here. And I'm hoping that these kinds of calls inspire people and encourage people that they are not alone. What you said is 100% right. People are not alone. No one listening to this is alone. There are people out there going through very similar things that you are. Even if you feel abnormal, even if you feel like no one will understand, even if you feel like people are going to judge you for what you have to say. And I hope that people feel welcome to call into places like this. This is not the only place like this, although I do hope that this becomes a unique place where it's not just one voice, but it's a whole community of people that support each other, and that brings us all together in some positive way. And again, I thank you so much for calling. You even held on the line for me while I had to step away for a minute. Thank you so much for your patience. And we've been on the phone for almost an hour now, and you seem like such a beautiful person, and you seem genuinely concerned about your family, and I think that's wonderful. And I'm just inspired by the humility you've taken in trying to correct whatever it is in going on with your son. I think it's so amazing and inspiring, and I wish there were more parents out there like you willing to do these kinds of things. And thank you again for calling, and I hope you call back again anytime.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me share my story.
Call back anytime. Take care. Wow. You guys are amazing. There are so many amazing people out there. She was right. You're not alone. And with that, we're going to turn the calls back on. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hello? Oh, hi. Sorry, I really didn't expect to actually answer. Sorry, let me gather my thoughts. It's really late here. Can you hear me fine, by the way?
Connection is a little fuzzy. But I think we chat. Can you guys hear our caller okay? I can hear you okay. It sounds a little fuzzy, but I can make it out.
Okay. Is this better or?
Let's just keep going. I feel confident that we'll be able to understand. What's going on? What do you want to talk about?
Okay, thank you very much. It's kind of about being disenfranchised, as you mentioned a bit earlier with chats with the lady. So I quite relate to what you guys were talking about and people before on previous chats. And I guess I came from a nihilistic place, choosing the education I'm in right now. Like, I want to take some responsibility just to have some purpose and sense in life.
Right.
But looking at, I guess, how the world is going, just with Ukraine and global warming and everything, it's hard not to get disenfranchised, I guess, is the main gist of it. Sorry, I was a bit discombobulated by actually getting an answer. I hope that made sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think there's a lot of people feeling that right now. And I feel like I say this at the beginning of every call now, but that's the reason we're doing this call. All of these reasons are reasons we're doing this show. So what do you say you're in a place of nihilism, and you say that you're in a place of disenfranchisement, and you mentioned global warming, you mentioned Ukraine. These are things, lots of people have different feelings about, of course, but if we can all, I'm asking of the chat and the viewers and of everyone, if we can just put those things aside for a second, the political ideals behind those, if we can just put those aside for a second and just empathetically listen to this caller to hear what they're feeling, I think that would be for the best. So I'll say that to start. And I'll add to that I think all kinds of people are feeling disenfranchised with the world for all kinds of different reasons. So I think we can all relate to that sense, that feeling, no matter where it's coming from for us personally. So can you tell me, a little bit about did you always feel this way, or is this like a recurring problem that's progressed, or is this like is it literally just as simple as you've become disenfranchised with recent events in the world?
Yeah, no, if you don't mind, I'd like, I guess, to give some context to it. It will still be anonymous, of course.
Please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, so I guess, again, I came from a place of nihilism, and then I again, kind of got out of that, hoping, silly as sound, to make a difference, just helping people, you know. And then I'm working on a master now on my 4th year. And it's just, it's so disheartening to see, I guess, I don't know how to put it into words, but just how, what should I say?
Take your time.
I guess
Take your time.
A question that's been on my mind a lot lately is when is humanity's peak, or at least the peak within the next 200-300 years, if that makes sense, because now with social media and, global warming, or wherever you want to point to, I'm starting to wonder if, like, will life quality in general go down from here? Just looking at trends, recent trends, you can point to 1,000 things, right? But are we going downhill from here, I guess, is what I'm feeling upon, and I think most people my age feel this way, in a sense.
Right. I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
This is a topic that is of peak interest to me personally as well. I think it's right on point what you're talking about. I hope this is of interest to the listeners too. I assume that it is, because I think you're not alone in feeling this way. All I can give you are opinions and encouragement, but I will lead by saying I'm a realist. I'm not a pessimist or an optimist, but I do have an optimistic view of the state of the world right now and the future of the world. But it does come with an edge so we can talk about that. But again, all I can give you is my opinions. So where would you like to start?
I guess just, I mean, the one thing would be, how do you actually stay more, like, what you're doing here is obviously helping people, right? And how do you actually stay motivated when you see so much around you all the time, if that makes sense? I wish I had something more concrete to come to you with, honestly.
No, I think this is very concrete. I think maybe you're struggling to get it out because it's such a dense issue. I'll take a stab at answering the question, but again, these are only my opinions, and then I'll just we can just have a conversation about it. My personal philosophy is that, as I said to the last caller, the world is under a lot right now. We're in the middle of a lot. You said it yourself. There's a lot going on in the world, and these things can be very discouraging. But my personal philosophy is that no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what the media is telling us, and I am someone that's very skeptical of the media. I don't. It's not that I'm definitely not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I'm not that type of person. And that's actually not a helpful statement, because people have all kinds of different thresholds for what a conspiracy theory is. But what I mean by that is that I'm someone that has worked in advertising, and I know how all media works. It's all propped up by advertising, and these media companies make money when they post headlines that get clicks because of advertising. And so the media is incentivized to publish headlines that get people riled up. And so my first major conviction about what you're talking about is that, the media is really not helping us right now, the mainstream media. I do believe there's a lot of positive things happening in digital media, which is why I'm mostly optimistic about where things are headed, because I do think we're in a major shift with information, and even with society and things like that, and even with things like trade, even though we're in a really dismal situation with global trade. I remain optimistic because I think we're in the middle of this shift where these trusted institutions that are media oriented are they're losing authority, and they're doing it to themselves through their business model. And I think that a lot of new media platforms are going to democratize a lot more for people. And I do think that things are going to get a little better in the future, but I do think we're in a really rough time. But beyond that, that's just an idea, of course. But beyond that, I think that we're all human. Like we all respond to the same positive stimuli. We all love empathy. We love it when people understand us. We love feeling understood. We love feeling cared for. We love feeling valued. And that's where these things like trade come from. If we can't value each other, why would I trade with someone I don't value? Why would I trade with someone if I don't feel valuable, if I don't feel like I have anything to add? And so I think that ultimately we're going to be fine, because we are creatures who are masters of value, and we understand that the benefit of a trade. And I think that we're just in a really rocky season right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, well, there was one point or something you touched upon that I've been always thinking quite a lot about, and that's like determinism. You talked about, advertisements and such, and just, sorry, sorry, I can't answer. I'm a bit anxious about this whole thing, so I'll move so much better a bit. Where do you leave off? Sorry.
Well, we were just you were saying you're feeling nihilistic and feeling discouraged because you feel like the world is declining in terms of quality of life. And I was just trying to give you a more optimistic take, which is that we're in this crazy time of getting used to the internet and this new digital world. And obviously there's a lot of turmoil, but there's a lot of good things happening too, is my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's your point. We are, still in the early stages of the internet, and we are adapting to this new social climate, I guess you could call it. So it makes sense that at least online there is a lot of turmoil, and things are kind of the Wild West right now. And as you also stated, it's no wonder that people are so, not even necessarily nihilistic, but just depressed about things, because, in a way, it's what interests us now, right? It's you have the bias of wanting to confirm your own beliefs, and you just keep getting fed these news. I'm sure there are other motivations as well behind why, we are fed so many negative stimuli, or that's why what we go towards, right? But I'm not sure what the answer to that would be. Again, if it's regulation or if it's whatever it might be. Again, I know you don't want to get into politics there, but it's strange, and I guess there is some optimism in that we are still in the infancy of the internet and everything like that.
Now, I do have, that does come laced with some bad news, in my opinion. These are all just my opinions, of course, but you asked, so I'll give them to you. The bad news, in my opinion, is that I think that we may very well be on the verge of some sort of decline of, oh boy, I'm even hesitating saying this. This is where a little bit of my pessimism creeps in. I do think that, but it's ultimately optimism, and that might be confusing. I'll get to it. The point is that I do think that we're in a season where we're going to have to adjust our expectations for what civilization can offer us, especially modern society here in the West, because a lot of the stuff that I don't know where you're from, but here in the West, a lot of people, you had an international number, which I don't know if that was because you masked it or what, but it looked like you're an international caller, so I have no idea where you're calling from. But the point is that here in the West, a lot of our ideals were propped up on by very bad ideas. The ideas themselves were good, but they were propped up by horrible practices like slavery and prejudice and things like this, and marginalization and stratification. And these are all things that propped up the golden age of America in the 50s and 60s. We may never be as wealthy of a nation as we were at that time, and maybe for good reason, is my point, because if I'm saying if if we were that well off at that time because of marginalization and subjugation and things like this, then we don't deserve to be that wealthy of a place, and we don't deserve to be, living in that kind of a lifestyle. That's my opinion, and it's controversial. But the good news is that I think that with technology advancing at the rate that it is, there should be no reason that the whole world can't live relatively comfortably in the future. Right? And we've got a lot of stuff to figure out to get there. And of course, that ventures into some regulatory and political kind of concepts, which we're not going to get into tonight because that's not what this is about. But I sense that you're someone who's struggling to find motivation in life, and you mentioned that you're on the brink of nihilism, and that's not something that will help civilization, because civilization is the antithesis of nihilism. There is no civilization that's going to stand on the basis of nihilism, because civilization it stands on the idea of trade and comparative advantage, and recognizing that some people are going to grow bananas really well, and some people are going to grow avocados really well, and some people are going to specialize in computer chips and cars, and we're all going to trade. And if we're all devolving into this state of nihilism, then we're not going to be standing for anything. And so we've got to stand on ideas that the West brings to us, like capitalism, in my opinion. Again, these are my opinions, and I'm not going to get political. And I don't believe saying that I'm pro-capitalism is political, because that's not, there's no policy I'm rooting for. It's just that, like, I think that we are, a place that that a lot of countries have. America's a place that a lot of countries have come to look to on the global stage for ideas on how to organize their societies. And I think that these are very real issues, and a lot of people are feeling disenfranchised and confused about what America is on the global stage. And these are just some ideas. These ideas I'm sharing are ideas that have helped me maintain a sense of productivity and positivity and inspiration for the future in a very bleak time. And I don't know if that helps you at all, but that really helps me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's kind of, the conclusion I came to myself when I started this education, and that was simply, I'll try to help as many people as I can, I guess, with the resource and, I guess, my abilities as they are. I guess it is just a constant struggle between that, as you're saying, keeping that motivation while seeing how the world is. And as you say, most likely, we should be prepared again, my opinion as well, as you stated, that maybe the quality of life will go down somewhat, but that is just, the world balancing itself out over time in a way. Again, there are, counter arguments like, again, global warming or other things that might stop that, but then again, that, as you say, we should really not stop trying because of that, of course.
Right.
It's early in the morning. I was up watching your show, so I'm having a bit of a hard time forming sentences. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry to hear you're having a hard time. Let me ask you can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah, of course, man. Go for it.
Have you tried any volunteer work or anything selfless just to be a good mammal, just help someone?
Funny you say that. Yeah, no, I took a gap year. If you say that, working for Doctors Without Borders, not going out as in the field, but trying to gather money and such at a point. And I'm studying to become a teacher,
okay.
Which is not 100% selfless, I would say, but at least the way I see it is the way I probably can contribute the most with my interests and abilities. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot your question. Volunteer work. Yeah, so I guess that's what I've been doing, trying to, again, benefit people around me. And again, it kind of comes from an nihilistic view, like, what should I say? If I die tomorrow, at least I can say, like, hey, I saved at least this amount of lives that way, or I've benefited these people this way,
Can you hold for 1 minute, please? I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, chat. I'm going to go for an extra 20 minutes tonight. I'm sorry. Bear with me. I'm having some issues at home again. My child care fell through. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. When I said we were keeping this loose, you guys didn't know just how loose I was talking, did you? Are you still with me?
Yeah, man, I'm here.
Great. Sorry about
Kind
that.
of ironic, the song that was playing. Like, it's something about the morning. I'm watching the sun come up. Yeah, no, I just want to say as well, your chat is amazing. Again, I've been feeling
They're amazing.
not quite coherent, and they're honestly, a lot more supportive than I would have ever thought. I mean, I've been watching, but when it's you on the line, you know.
Chat's
It's
amazing.
kind of different.
You hear that, chat? You guys are amazing. You hear that? So, where were we? We were talking about nihilism and the state of the world, and you were in the middle of a thought, and I had to run upstairs for a second. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I had a thought while you were gone. Something a bit more concrete that I guess kind of relates to being disenfranchised, that you might have quite an interesting perspective on, I guess. And that is... Oh, sorry, what?
I'm listening.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's because I guess as a teenager, I'm in my early 20s at the moment, but in your teenage years, everybody says like, hey, it gets better, right? And as you stated earlier, the group of people you work for are people that are now just becoming adults. And I guess one of the things for me at least that's quite, not demotivating, but it's concerning is that the learning curve still seems so steep, and I guess that my next chapter of life is the one you're in right now. I'm just wondering, do the complexities, either in your own, well, not personal life, but in every sense, either if it's your own mentality, because I feel like, at least the age I'm in now, there is so much to explore, so many concepts that intertwine and like create new concepts, and that keeps growing, but also just in life with personal finance, jobs, relationships, that kind of stuff. I guess what I'm asking from your perspective is the learning curve as steep as it seems in your early 20s? I hope that makes sense.
I'm not quite tracking, and I want to give the chat some context, and just in case we have new viewers since I came back. We're taking a caller, and there've been some comments about the quality of your mic. There seems to be a connection issue. It seems like you're calling internationally, so maybe it's just that this is an international call. For some reason, the connection's kind of loose. It sounds like everybody can hear you. Seems like the chat's enjoying the conversation, but just to give everyone some context, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about nihilism. The caller is experiencing a kind of a being dragged into a sense of nihilism with the state of the world, and trying to find some optimism. And you were trying to explain a learning curve, which I don't quite understand. What was the learning curve you're trying to describe?
Yeah, sorry. No, at least for me, just keep simple. It seems like the older I get, the more exponentially complex the world seems, like your inner world and the outer world, and you're in kind of the chapter I'm now starting to open.
I see.
So I'm wondering, like, does that learning curve stop being so steep once you reach, I believe you said you turned 30 recently, and is it as steep as it seems in your early 20s, I guess?
I'll be turning 35 next month, so I'm a little bit older than you think I am. But thank you for that compliment. I'll take it. The world, to me, the end of my 20s and the beginning of my 30s were super, super hard. In an introspective kind of way. I was really hard on myself. I think I came to learn this is very normal, so I'm not sure if you're going through some kind of developmental phase where the world seems heavier and harder on you than it may actually be in reality, but that is pretty normal from what I've come to understand through therapy and reading a bunch of different books and things like this, that I thought it was just me in my late 20s and early 30s, but apparently this is it's like a quarter life crisis, they kind of call it. I'm not sure if that's what you're experiencing specifically, because it sounds like you've got all these other things tied into it. Yeah, it sounds like you've got all these other things tied into it, like the state of the world, and you said you mentioned nihilism, which is really serious. I'm concerned for you, because nihilism doesn't help anyone. If you're a nihilist, you should just go be a hunter-gatherer. You shouldn't do this civilization thing at all. So I do think that if you how old are you?
I'm 23. I'll be 24 this year.
Okay. Well, maybe you're in an, I don't know you, and I've only been talking to you for, a little bit of time here, so I don't know what you're going through. Is there something deeper going on? Are you questioning life decisions, or is this purely like about finding hope in the state of the world right now?
Yeah, no, you're hitting a nail on the head there in some way. Yeah, no, I'm also questioning my profession. I'm 4 years into a master, and I feel like I might be better suited in some other profession, but then again, the profession I'm pursuing now encompasses all my interests. It's kind of, I guess, choosing between being a jack of all trades or going for one thing and putting all your eggs in one basket, I guess. And I'm also wondering, hey, should I maybe have done that? Should I do that? And then, kind of, pursuing something safe or pursuing what you really want as well ties into that, if that makes sense.
Maybe you're going through all of it. It may be that you're going through all of it at once. Maybe you're having these developmental dilemmas, and at the same time, the world is going through this huge shift. And if it's both, that would perfectly, to me, that sounds perfectly understandable why you'd be slipping into some nihilism. That's. But I think that I will encourage. I think this is very encouraging for me to hear. To me, this sounds encouraging because you mentioned you're coming into your mid-20s. It seems like a perfectly normal time to me to be questioning some of these things. Your 20s are where you realize what you're good at, and this is something I heard a psychologist say once, and I'm going to butcher it. I think it might actually be a famous quote, but the gist of it is that your 20s are where you figure out what you're good at, and your 30s are where you figure out how to apply that, and your 40s and 50s are where you realize what the value of that is in a more human sense, and how you derive value from that personally. And I'm not 40 yet, so I can't really speak to the full truthfulness of that sentiment, but so far that has proven to be true in my case. And the end of my 20s were super hard. It was a lot of people there's a lot of celebrities who don't make it past their late 20s. A lot of celebrities have died in tragic ways through suicide and things like this, because your 20s are really difficult. And there was a caller the other night saying they were discouraged because they were just starting their life and feeling discouraged by the lack of opportunity and the sheer weight of what they were under in trying to build a new life for themselves. And my response was that your 20s don't get enough credit. A lot of adults just look on people in their 20s and they're like, just get over it, grow a pair, things like this. And that stuff's not helpful. Like, your 20s are really hard. And so I want to commend you for you sound like a really, I don't believe you're slipping into nihilism, because you sound too upbeat for someone that I've known some nihilists, and you don't seem like one. You sound like somebody that really wants to believe that there's good in the world, and I very much do believe there's good in the world. I think the world has a lot of challenges right now, of course, and we do have challenges. There's a lot of them, but I do think that even with what I said, kind of negatively about where we are with. In the West, with a lot of Western ideals being propped up by prejudice and things like slavery and just really horrible ideas, that maybe quality of life does diminish a little bit, but at the same time maybe it doesn't, because technology's rapidly improving. And 150 years ago we didn't have air conditioning, and most people today live better than kings did 1,000 years ago. So who knows? Maybe the world just gets better. We don't know. That's kind of the hope that we live with today, is just that we can apply ourselves. And if we don't, what scares me is the possibility that people don't apply themselves, the possibility where people stop applying themselves. We need people applying themselves more than ever, because if we don't have people applying themselves, where do the solutions come from? We've got to have better solutions to these problems than we have right now. And that means that we've got to remain optimistic, and we can't slip into nihilism. So that's my spiel on that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. It's just, yeah, you just gotta keep swimming, I guess. Like
Just keep
that.
swimming. I love that.
I guess that's the innate sense in me as well. Yeah, and I really appreciate what you said about the 20s, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it feels like everyone talks about the teenage years and like, oh, they're supposed to be so difficult, and I don't want to discredit anyone in chat that might be a teenager and feeling that is difficult. But for me personally, and I think maybe I had my teenage years were kind of easy, I guess, and now. Yeah, no, I just really appreciate you saying what you said about the 20s, because again, as you say, a lot of people just shove that away and don't really, give it any credit really how difficult it is, because I think a lot of the choices that boomers made when they were maybe 17 to 18, 20-year-olds are now stuck with, but it's a lot more complex with student debt and just everything. There's a lot more options. There's a lot more variables.
Right. We do live in a more complicated world.
I was big about.
Yeah, our world is more complicated now than it was with the boomers. DW in the chat had a helpful sentiment, which I hope is encouraging to you. They say, if he is questioning his decisions with school, he is in the right direction away from nihilism, because it means something matters to him. And I think that's 100% right. It sounds like something matters to you.
That is true. Yeah, it is. I mean, absolutely. I guess it in a way comes down to also balancing, making the world a better place in a sense, and how much of yourself you're giving for that, like not becoming a martyr. I'm not saying that I'm anywhere close to that, of course, but just how much of yourself should you sacrifice for the society, and how much should you focus on your own well-being, I guess. And of course, people say follow your dreams and all that, but in my opinion, being realistic, most people won't follow their dreams. Of course, try to find something that makes you happy, but it's unrealistic that every person that now wants to become a YouTuber or a singer will become it, right? So it's, you just touched on something, personal sacrifice and happiness, I guess.
Yeah, you just touched on something that's really important too, that I think people may need to hear. Again, these are just opinions, but and we do live in actually, this is not opinion. We do live in a world, and this is a product of capitalism. This is the downside of capitalism. We live in an age where everyone expects to be Elon Musk. We all want to be Elon Musk, right? Actually, I don't. I like looking at Elon Musk and just enjoying the hilarity that he is. But it's true. We live in a world. Everybody wants to be a billionaire. And it's not. You said it. It's not realistic. Not everybody can be a billionaire. And I think there's this belief that if you have a certain amount of money, if you make a certain amount of money, all your problems go away. And it's just not true. And I think that is the kind of disenfranchisement I hope people wake up to. One good thing about the era that our parents and grandparents grew up in is that they had a really realistic sense of what to expect from their life. They had realistic expectations of their life. These were factory workers. These were people who didn't make a ton of money. But what did they do? They rolled their sleeves up. They retired, and they, now this is a complicated subject, obviously, because I was the one to say that those times were propped up by a lot of unfair practices and a lot of horrible ideas. So, so there's some room for debate in there. But my point is that there was a work ethic that existed back then that I'm afraid we're losing, and because we're in this time where with social media and things like Instagram, where it's this life competition platform where everybody's just like trying to compete for who has the best life, and that will kill us. That's not good. We have got to grow past that, I believe, very strongly, which is I'm getting choked up. Guys, this is really important to me. Like I said, we weren't going to talk about ideas, but this is an idea that this is more than an idea. This is people's entire worldview. This is people's entire sense of self, and this is an axiom. This is not just like we're talking about a policy here and there or something like that. We're talking about human expectation. We're talking about what we can expect of our own lives. And it's not realistic for all of us to expect that we're going to be billionaires. It's not possible. We have got to remain realistic with our expectations. Rhett McLaughlin, I quoted him on episode 1 of this with a great quote where he challenged me with something, and he's full of little quips. He had another one. I don't think this is his quote, but I heard it from him, so I'll quote him. He said that the secret to happiness is lower expectations. And he's completely right. And it's not his quote. I can't remember whose quote it is, so I'm sorry. But it's a completely true quote. And your point is, in my opinion, very valid. That, we got a lot of people today that just are not willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work to build their life from the ground up. They think that they're just going to get on TikTok and get 3 million followers and all their questions get answered. And that's not realistic. Even if you get those 3 million subscribers on TikTok, you're still not paying your bills. You're still not, these things mean less and less the longer time goes on. So we've got to remain realistic about the state of the world and our place in it. And I think that's a great point you brought up.
Thanks for that. Yeah, no, I think you bring up something quite interesting as well, which is talk about getting followers and such. At least, again, this is my worldview, but I kind of view everything as a drug, because your brain will get used to almost anything.
This lemon is a drug.
Right? What?
My lemons here on the table, are they a drug? I like to think they are.
I mean, in a sense, they give you some kind of pleasure, right? And if you were to continuously squirt them into your cup and drink, right, you would become desensitized to that. But
desensitized to lemons.
Everything, in my opinion, works like a drug.
Yeah, that's fair.
In that sense, say with money, becoming a billionaire. There's this statistic, I'm sure you heard of it, that after $70,000. Again, it's not my native currency, but something like that. You don't really increase your happiness with money, right?
Right. After $70,000.
Everything.
After $70,000 a year, you get less and less happy. You stop getting happier. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an amazing. I think it's an amazing topic for conversation. I'm so sorry to hear that you're struggling with some nihilism. Is anything that the chat has any of this been helpful? Is there anything else that would make this a beneficial call for you?
I really appreciate this. I guess I'll finish off with that. I've been watching you for almost 10 years now, since I was 13.
Wow.
So it's quite amazing talking to you. Again, I've been rather anxious, shaking a bit this whole time, just trying to comprehend it, I guess. So, it was really nice. It's almost 7 here in the morning, so I'm going to hit the hay pretty soon, and
well,
start a new day.
I really enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate your 10 years of support. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it more than you know. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Yeah, goodbye.
Take care. All right, guys, I am going to go a little longer tonight. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me through the starting and stopping. Give me a second to turn on the phone lines. We'll take a few more callers. I will go a little bit longer tonight to make it up. Hi, thanks for calling. Toast 1. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hello?
Hi, thanks for calling. What do you want to talk about?
Oh my God. Hi.
What do you want to talk about?
I'm surprised I'm here.
What's up?
I don't really know what to say. I've been watching you for a while, and I think your videos are...
Toast. If you don't know what to say, don't call. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I would encourage people to really take time to think about what they're calling about. We got people calling in with really heavy issues. Please respect the other callers and try to prepare something short to lead into a conversation. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I hope you guys understand. We're trying to get to callers who need to talk. Hi, thanks for calling.
Julian.
Hi.
I'm actually talking with you.
Hi, what do you want to talk about?
Down here. All right. So I guess it's kind of a heavy subject. I was diagnosed with cancer about it was about a year and a half ago now,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I
So
found it
sorry.
very cathartic to talk through my experience. I don't know if that's kind of in the purvey of the show, but it helps me a lot, and I kind of want to talk about my viewpoint after, because I feel like that was the most important thing to come out of it, rather than like the diagnosis itself.
What are you
You know?
going through?
Did you say where did I call from?
No. Don't tell me where you're calling from. No personal information, please. I said what are you going through? What's the issue?
So I got diagnosed formally with PTSD about 6 months after treatment, and I felt like it was correct. I felt like that was definitely like apt to the situation I was going through, but I have struggled to come to a sense of like living again, because going through that and like having a serious brush with death, like people get in car accidents all the time and they have like a brush with it, but it was kind of like a continued sense of that for 6 months straight, and like going through that and then coming to a place where I have to figure out how to I feel like everyone tells me I should have more of an appreciation for life now, but I don't feel like I gained that. I felt like I lost like a sense of innocence that I had before, and I've been stuck trying to find how to feel like I'm alive again, rather than fighting with this thing that I had to fight for a year, you know?
So it sounds like you have some PTSD from your experience with cancer. Is that right?
Right, right.
Oh.
And it's expected almost. Like I've been told that it's normal, and I've been told how I should expect that, and it's not abnormal for me to feel those feelings. But I feel it's harder to come to grips with continuing life now, rather than having to come to grips with the disease, because like that felt more natural than having to come to grips with being alive and the reality of being alive after that.
Right. What was your experience like with cancer? Sounds like it was really intense.
So I had been dealing with back pain for a whole year. So after my 18th birthday, I just instantly started building up this pain, and it started out and it was little, and it was really like it was nothing to worry about at the beginning, but then it just kept degrading, and I was going to the same doctor who she had followed my case the whole time, and she started treating me after a while like I was just coming in for like medicine, and she didn't treat me like I had like a real problem, and I ended up losing my ability to walk because my tumor was in my hip. So I went to the ER myself, and I like tried to get everything done through them, because I knew that they would be like faster with the process. And that's when I actually got diagnosed. But I went through that struggle for a year of getting diagnosed, and then I got diagnosed with stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which before that I had got that diagnosis, they had told me that it was a different, rare type of cancer, and I didn't have more than like a 20% chance of living. So I lived with that reality. And then they told me that I actually had a different type of cancer, and I had an 80% chance of making it through treatment, and that my outlooks were good. And I went through that process, and I ended up in the ICU a few times throughout my treatment. And it was just, I got to a really bad point, but then I made it through after like the fight was really bad. But now I'm here and trying to figure that out.
So you're dealing with you said a loss of innocence, which to me sounds like you brushed up with, you had a really close encounter with death. You had a really harsh run with cancer, and
right.
Sounds like, from what I know about near-death experiences, that's what happens when you come that close to death. Your expectations for life kind of realign, and I mean, I think that can be a positive thing, but it sounds like that's really holding you back. Is that right?
Right. It was, my closest brush was, there was a certain medicine that they gave me, which they had given me every few times, and it was, it's a more powerful medicine, so you have to take it within like 2 months first. Like you can only get it 2 months at a time.
Okay.
And I received the medicine, and I was fine before, but that time it stayed in my system, and then my kidney failure and my throat lining was all messed up. I had all sorts of problems, and I got to a point where I couldn't breathe anymore. So
Oh
I
my
was brought to
gosh.
the ICU, and there was a moment where like it was really like touch and go. Like they had the 6 people in the room watching me, trying to care for me, trying to get me back to a stable point. And at that point, I was so bonked out from all the chemo drugs and the morphine that I like couldn't even feel myself being alive. Like I definitely felt in that moment like I was slipping, but I made it out of that. But like that moment, I felt that moment. That's when like me as a kid died. I don't know how else to say it. It was like I felt like I could lose. I lost that sense of like being alive is fun, being alive is wonderful. I just slipped into like it's mundane, and I don't know how to like crawl my way back to a point where I feel happy with like just being here, you know?
Marshall Lemming from the chat says, after I came off chemo, the best decision I ever made was to invest in my mental health. Glad to hear you are talking. And there's a bunch of love going out to you in the chat, people saying they wish they could give you a hug and stuff. I don't know what it's like to have cancer.
Appreciate it.
I've had a couple near-death experiences, but it sounds like you were up against death for a long time, and that sounds like, yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. You've been diagnosed with PTSD, so that's intense. It sounds really intense. I mean, I'm also glad you're talking. I'm with Marshall from the chat. I think that's a really good sign that you're talking. You sound good. You sound healthy. You sound upbeat. It sounds like you really want to figure out. It sounds like you're in a place where you know this is a problem and you're going to conquer it, and you're just trying to figure out what the next steps are. Have you opened up to other people about this? Is there anybody in your life that is there for you that has been supportive, or what? Tell me about that.
Right. So I sought professional help immediately after, because I was
Good.
when I got the initial diagnosis of like depression and PTSD. It's like, of course, I want to talk to someone about it. I find that I feel reluctant to talk to my therapist about what's really going on. Because I feel the responsibility, especially with people that I haven't seen in a long time that knew what I went through. I feel a responsibility to adhere to their expectations of what cancer is. Like I feel like I have to be performative and be like, hey, yeah, I feel a lot better. Life is so much better. Like I feel a responsibility to do that, even to my therapist, which is the worst part, because like obviously she's the one person who's literally paid to like listen to me when I'm like talking about it. But
Right. She wants to hear your problems.
right, she's supposed to hear my problems, but like I found myself lying about the mood questionnaire and stuff like that, because it's like I feel like I'm failing your expectations if I tell you I'm not doing as good as I want to.
That's a
Like
lie.
I feel like I know, and like I'll tell my parents about it, I tell my girlfriend about it, like I try to talk to it, but it comes to a certain point, like, are you good? No, but I keep not being good because I'm stuck in that mind place still where I'm like, I still feel like trash. I'm still trying to figure out what being alive to me means anymore, you know?
Right.
But I feel like I let them down because it's like I want to live up to the expectation that I made it through this. I'm so happy. Like it's something to hold on to because it's good that I made it through. But I'm still struggling with the fact that I went through it and what that means now. But I feel like I'm letting down my expectations. That's the main thing.
Well, you're a champion. You've come closer to death than probably any person in your life, and maybe is it possible that you feel like other people can't appreciate what you went through because it was so intense, and maybe you're afraid to take them there in their heads, and maybe you're afraid to let them really know how you feel because you think maybe they can't handle it?
Wow. Okay, you're really hitting it. So I definitely, I would almost say alienating sometimes to like talk to people about what they're going through. And I understand that it's real and like feelings are real, and I understand that it is hard for them. But like I see what they're facing, and I sometimes I feel pessimistic. Like this is not important to your life. Like you can get through this. But I feel like I can see how they get like devastated, and that's where I felt like the loneliest, because I'm like I'm in a weird headspace now. Like I've thought something so like intangible to me, and then like I made it through that, and it's like I don't know, I feel like I if I was dealing with the same things they were dealing with, knowing now what I know, I feel like I could handle it like without it affecting me as much. And then I see them going through it, and I understand that it's real that they're going through it, but I have like trouble. It's like that's what's tripping us up here, and that's been the main thing. It's like I feel like I disconnected that, and that's lonely, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we go through hard things in life that are very niche. I've never had cancer. I've never had a near-death experience like it sounds like you have. But I do know from having some very niche, difficult experiences, that feeling of isolation that comes along from that. That's what I was picking up on when I asked that last question, because I sensed that you just felt really alone and misunderstood. And that's a real problem that it's not exclusive to cancer. It's not exclusive to any of these other callers who called in feeling misunderstood through deconstructing religion or an abusive spouse, or whatever it is. Like there's all kinds of reasons people feel misunderstood and isolated and unable to say out loud to a friend what they're going through, because it's heavy and people don't understand. But it sounds like you need more people in your life that you can just level with. Do you have anybody in your life that you can just answer that question directly and say like, hey, can I be real with you? Like, I'm not sure I'm doing great today. Do you have anybody like that you can say that to?
I have a few people, and it's not like my brother's that way. I can talk to him about what I'm going through.
Good.
I can say it, but he doesn't know how to like handle it in the moment, I guess. Like he's obviously not equipped to be a therapist, so I'm not just trauma dumping on him all the time. But like I try to tell him how I feel, but he's so nonchalant about like that's just his attitude is nonchalant. So he doesn't brush it off, but he's not gonna sit there and like try to like go all introspective. He's not gonna try to have a deep conversation. He's just gonna like say, I'm here for you. And like that's good sometimes, but I like the deeper, like I'm like analyzing why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling rather than just taking it at face value. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anybody else? Is there it sounds like your brother may not be the best person to share those kinds of thoughts with. Like when I was going through the hardest years of my life, I had about 2 or 3 friends that, most people I would just say like, it's actually funny. I picked up a funny habit from a friend of mine, actually my old podcast co-host, Andrew Rader. He has a funny habit that I adopted. When people ask him how he's doing, he says, "Oh, I don't know," in a really upbeat way. And I kind of adopted that because I think it's great. Like, how do you know how you're doing? Like maybe you walk out the front door and get hit by a bus 5 seconds later after you're saying you're doing great. You don't. Obviously it's just a joke. It's a silly thing, but the point is that we need people in our lives that we can level with, and maybe your brother isn't the best person. Like, when I was going through my hardest years, I had about 2 or 3 friends I could call and really level with them and not just joke and say something silly like, I don't know, or I'm doing fine, how are you? You need a few people that are thoughtful, that'll put some real thought into a response. I was fortunate to have a couple people like that in my life through my hardest years. And I'm wondering if, when I say that, there's anybody else that comes to mind for you that you might be able to just share something with really candidly, something that's really heavy, and somebody that might have something good to say or encouraging to say. Do you have anybody like that outside of your brother?
I have my therapist, and she is wonderful, and I've been able it's crazy how we have a perception that sometimes we're going to tell someone something, and then they're going to have a specific reaction, and then they just have no reaction. Because every time I bring something to my therapist, I'm scared that she's going to react in a certain way or think of me in a certain light. But then that's obviously not her character. That's just a insecurity of mine that I'm going to have that negative reaction. But my therapist, and then I have a friend that we're always on the level, so I know that I can talk to her about it, but I don't really talk to her about it because I hate feeling like a burden, even though I know that it's not burdensome as much.
What about a support group? Have you ever tried a support group?
I've thought about it. I've seen...
Even a Facebook support group. The chat's lighting up saying Facebook support group, but I just think a support group in general. no matter where. In human like a face-to-face connection would be best, in my opinion. But yeah, if you can't find that where you are, maybe a Facebook support group.
I know there is support groups where I am because I've been recommended to them. I don't know why I'm apprehensive to do it. Like I'm a very social person. I'm a very extroverted person, so I think that like having a connection with those people would be great. But there's something in me that just like feels weird about it. I don't know. It's
can I go back to something you said earlier? It sounded like you were going to go on to something, but you just said something that connected to something you said earlier, which was, do you mind if I interject with a question?
Absolutely, go for it.
You were saying earlier that you had a hard time opening up with problems, which is why we're kind of talking about support groups, and that you said that you kind of had this sense of optimism, and I'm wondering what that is. Is there some kind of are you a perfectionist? Is there some kind of like sense? Were you raised with some sense? I don't like asking leading questions, but I'm just trying to go quick. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Are you a perfectionist, or was there some like environment you were raised in that expected you to be perfect all the time, or what is this thing that has to do? Oh, yes, huh? Okay, interesting.
That's exactly how I was raised. Yeah, I feel like I've definitely fell under expectations in other areas of my life, and my parents still love me, and like they don't treat me any different, but I still relate them to like the time where they did have these huge expectations of me, and I did feel very put on as a child. But
okay.
Yeah.
What are you thinking as you're talking about that? What's going through your head?
I think that I'm trying to control this situation and not have to talk about me feeling down, because it's a part of expectations that I can control. Like if I'm just assuming they have the expectation that I'm going to feel better after this, but if that were true, it's something I can control, and I can pretend on the outside at least to be going through it well, and then I feel like that's like just me trying to make up for things where I felt like I've disappointed them in other areas.
I hate to hear that. You're under some expectations from your family. Is that something that still haunts you, or is it residual from your childhood? Is there some way that you can easily shift out of that? Is there some way you can kind of retrain your brain to be okay with not being perfect?
They're not the people that raised me as much anymore. I feel like they've definitely done their own maturing and gotten to a different like perspective on things, whether that be because I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions, or because they truly matured out of like, because I feel like it was childish, the like expectations that were placed on me when I was young, and that's why I kind of moved away and did my own thing. Like I figured out what I wanted to be rather than what my expectations were, in kind of a rebellious way. But it's like I still feel like I've done something wrong, even though I haven't done anything wrong, you know?
I can relate with that. How old are you? You might have already told me. I apologize.
I'm 20 years old now. I was diagnosed at 18, and then I got done with treatment May of 2021.
Yeah, it's a really natural time to be questioning things like that. I want to just give you a bunch of encouragement and say that, not everything our parents teach us is right. I like to think that a lot of what our parents teach us is right. I'm a parent. I'm fully aware that everything I teach my kids is not going to be right. It just kills me that more parents don't acknowledge that from the get-go, because so many kids are raised like, it sounds like in the same way that you and I were. I'm sure our childhoods were very, very different. No two childhoods are exactly the same is what I mean. But, the point is that there's just way too many parents today, especially in America, where they're just, it's like, I'm right, and you're going to be like me. And it's like not helpful at all. And I think it's really natural to be your age and to be questioning these things. And I just want to encourage you that, I think it's. I'm not telling you to go out and be a rebel and be like become a black sheep of the family or anything like that, But I am saying that I think it's great where you are, and you're on an adventure. You're at the beginning of a huge adventure where you're building a life, and you're trying to figure out what's aiding you from your childhood, and what's serving you, and what's weighing you down. And it sounds like this constant expectation for perfection is really weighing you down. And I'm glad to hear that you're talking about it, and that you're processing it in therapy, and that you're calling and talking to hundreds of strangers about it.
Hey man, I'd rather talk to hundreds of strangers than some of my friends.
That's what this is about. I like to think it's easier than therapy. There's no information, no credit card. It's also it's not as in depth as therapy. I really hope you do continue with therapy, because you're going to get a lot more out of somebody that can be there with you daily or weekly or monthly or whatever it needs to be than you will out of a 20-minute phone call with my ass.
Wow. This is crazy. I've literally watched you for as long as I can remember. You're the first YouTuber I ever saw, like all the kidnap theories and, of course, waffles and all that.
Wow, you've been watching a long time.
You're a wonderful man. Absolutely. You were I think you were literally the first YouTube channel I ever subscribed to, but yeah. I was even going to request you for my Make-A-Wish video and didn't end up going through, because you have to be younger than 18, which I didn't know.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. Was this? Is there anything else that would make this a beneficial call, or anything else you want to get off your chest? Or I do want to encourage you. I'm now in the habit of encouraging all the callers to go back and read the chat, because the chat has been so helpful in these last several calls and in these last couple episodes. I do hope you go read the chat, because there's a lot of people in here. It sounds like they went through similar things, and I hope you go read it after we're done.
I will.
Is there anything else?
You're going to post this as a video, right?
This will be up as a video. That's right.
Sweet. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking to me. I think it was really beneficial.
Excellent. Thanks for calling. Take care of yourself. All right, guys, I'm going to take one more caller. Again, I'm going a little bit late because I kept you waiting tonight. I'm really sorry. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I do want to say, before I take the next caller, I forgot to say this at the beginning, so I'll say it here at the end, too. I'm going to repeat this at the end, just because I just want to encourage everybody to... I noticed that the last two episodes, there were a few callers who went back into the chat and revealed their identity as a caller. And I just want everyone to consider the benefits of remaining completely anonymous. Now, I'm not telling anybody to not go, say, hey, I was the caller from this episode. But I'm just asking everyone to consider the benefits of not doing that, of keeping this completely anonymous. I'm not saying not to do it, but I just think, if you want to do it, it's totally up to you. But again, just in the spirit of anonymity and keeping this feeling like a safe place, so that people don't come in and see people are, revealing their identities. Of course, it's a personal choice, but consider the benefits. And now I will turn on the calls again, and I'll take one more. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi, is this Julian?
Yes. What do you want to talk about?
Wow. Hi. So, I am going to be getting married soon, and I'm really excited. I love my fiancée so much. But I have, and she knows about this, but I have a bit of a problem with porn. And I've listened the last few nights about how some other callers have dealt with their issues with this. But I'm really stuck, because I know the impact that it's having on me mentally, and any impacts that it could potentially have on my relationship with my soon-to-be wife. And I've I've tried for years to stop, and it's I don't want to engage in that, but no matter it really feels like no matter how hard I try, I always go back to it, and I I want to be faithful in my relationship, and especially getting married. That's so important, and she knows I struggle with it. And I really appreciate how she does, and she understands. But man, I'm stuck.
I hear it in your voice. You're really tormented by this.
Yeah.
How much of your
Absolutely.
time is this taking up?
So, I mean, it really varies. Sometimes I can go like a week, sometimes it's day to day. Usually it's never multiple times per day, but I can't think of the last time that it's been longer than a week.
Okay. So is this an addiction thing? Or would you say you're addicted to this?
I would say I'm addicted to it.
Well, with addiction, you know, I've had a bunch of friends who have, over the years, tried to quit smoking. And, you know, nicotine's one of the most addictive things there is, one of the hardest habits to kick. I like to compare nicotine to porn because they're both like just these really dumb things that should be really easy to kick, but they're like not. You know, like a cigarette is so cheap, and like they're everywhere, and you can bum a cigarette from anyone. Porn's exactly the same way. It's like it should be this thing that's really easy to kick, and it's not. And my friends who've really struggled quitting cigarettes, over the years, you know, I was always kind of like in my friends' ears, like, you know, I was never a pest about it, but people I cared about, I would be like, hey, do you ever think about not smoking? You know, and they would, many of them have stopped since these kinds of conversations, but I'll never forget, one of my friends told me what a therapist told him about smoking, and it was that, I'll put it in his voice, the way he told me. He said, I cannot quit smoking until I want to quit smoking. And I know that I want to quit smoking, but I'm not ready yet. And I wonder if that makes any sense to you. I don't know your story, and I don't like leading questions, but it's kind of hard to figure out. Like in this format, I'm struggling to figure out how to get through these conversations without asking specific questions. Does that resonate with you? Is there something in your? I'm not sure what your lifestyle is or anything like that, but is there like some kind of sexual repression that you're using porn for as a supplement that's unhelpful, or like do any of these things apply, or off base?
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. I know it. You literally have no clue who I am. So it's like you're speaking to a wall. So I know, I completely understand.
Better than a wall.
Ask more questions. Well, yeah. So, I grew up from a Christian background. I was raised in a Christian household, and I'm still Christian to this day. I feel like I'm kind of wavering in my faith. I'm in the kind of the status that I've heard a lot of other callers call in about sort of doubting aspects of religion, but I the the main I hate to say that I get anything from it, but I mean, the main thing that I really think I get is gratification, because my wife and I are waiting, or my fiance and I are waiting, but I I don't want to. I'm not trying to use it as a replacement for anything.
I see.
And I'm not trying to, you know.
Right. So
and I feel like the biggest piece of crap if I if I go that way.
Right. Well, it sounds like you're asking for my personal opinion on this, and I'm really kind of scared to give you my personal opinion on this because
I'm sorry. I know this is not about you for you to give your opinion. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
not trying to.
don't apologize. Don't apologize. I will
I'm
try.
kind of stuck.
Yeah, I hear the torment in your voice, and so I'm not turning you down, but I'm trying to be very careful because I don't want to. You're in the middle of a lot. You're about to get married. You're about to, you're struggling with porn. You're young. It sounds like you're young. How old are you?
I'm 20.
You're 20. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Honestly, like I'm kind of, I don't even want to say this, but I'm kind of nervous that you're deconstructing faith and about to get married and you're struggling with porn. These three things together sound like a really rough thing.
It's a bit of a melting pot.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, it's a bit of a melting pot. Makes me kind of concerned. And sex is, it sounds like you and your wife are waiting to have sex until you're married. Yeah. I'm not here. I cast no judgment on what anyone chooses to do with their life. In fact, I'm very familiar with that lifestyle. I too grew up in the church, and I'm familiar with all those ideas and true love waits and all that stuff. I'm very familiar. So there's no judgment at all. I just want to know that you're so young and you're about to get married and you're struggling with this thing that's tormenting you, and that just really scares me. And I'm trying to. I want you to get something out of this. The chat is already lighting up with some things that may or may not be helpful for you. But
I will absolutely go back to it.
But there's, this is a really sensitive thing because we're talking about some axioms. And I don't love Jordan Peterson, but he has a great quote. I don't like to kick people in the axiom. It's a great quote because it's true. Like no good comes from, judging people and trying to get them to change their beliefs. I would never want to do that to a caller. And at the same time, there's some very real things about sex that are really tricky to navigate. And it's the reason why porn is such a big problem for people. I mean, maybe like a quarter of our callers so far have been people struggling with porn. And that's the case in point. Sex is this thing we have a drive for in life. Everyone has it. And it's a reproductive impulse we have. Comes from our reptilian brain. Our reptilian brain is what keeps us alive, keeps us reproducing, it keeps us eating. It's responsible for all the impulses that keep us alive. It keeps us from walking in front of oncoming traffic. And so sex is this very real thing that drives us in life. And it's my belief that a lot of people who struggle with porn are just sexually repressed, to put it bluntly. And that worries me for you. I'm not telling you, again, there's no judgment. And I've also known plenty of, there are monks who never have sex and they don't look at porn. So, and at the same time, there are, you have Catholic priests who are celibate and don't look at porn, and yet some of these people end up getting caught as being pedophiles and doing horrible things to little kids. So it's not a one-stop. There are exceptions to every rule. There are different scenarios. It's a very complex issue, but the common denominator is that we are driven by sex, and sex is really messy. And people do things. All of these things that we're talking about, whether it's being a pedophile or actually, I would probably exclude pedophilia based on the definition of that specific thing. But all kinds of bad things come out of sexual repression, and porn is probably the biggest one. And it does make me really. I just want to give you a hug. I don't know what to. I don't know what else to. I don't know what to give you. But I do wonder if you're processing this with a counselor regularly.
So I've gone to therapy for just sort of, I went through a phase, a couple of years really. It was pre-COVID, but I had some really tough depression that I was dealing with, depression, anxiety. It's gotten a bit better. I'm medicated. I'm living with it. I'm I'm not just living with it, I'm overcoming it in ways, but I haven't seen any sort of counselor for this in particular.
Haven't heard, what kind of counselors are you looking at? I would say there's lots of good counseling for this problem.
So honestly, I didn't really think of counseling just for this problem because I honestly, until you just said that, it never even occurred to me that there would be counseling just for this problem. And I guess that's sort of a very,
Yeah, I mean, maybe you
I
have.
guess a dumb answer in a way. In a
No.
way, it's a naive answer.
No, I mean, maybe sex addiction is a real thing. Sex addicts, they are out there, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, it's like I said, I led by asking if you think this is an addiction, and you said you thought it was. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you're 20,
probably.
you're 20, you've never had sex. It sounds like. What I would hate to hear is like 4 years from now, you're calling back saying like, I've just discovered I'm a sex addict. When you could have nipped that in the bud, and maybe you don't know that yet. If you're a virgin, you might not know, but I would hate for you to get in a marriage and discover you're a sex addict.
That is a fair point. That is absolutely a good point.
I'm not saying not to get married.
Something I never thought about before.
I guess I'm just encouraging you to really make an effort to, not just let this be a 20-minute phone call with me, but to use this as a launching pad for some real positive steps in your life towards a better peace of mind, a better life. It sounds like you don't have that right now.
That's kind of where I'm at. I feel like I'm just really stuck, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and that's what I'm going to use that as. I'm going to use this as that launching point that you said. I'm going to if
Great.
there is something really there, I'm going to find a way to nip it in the bud. Maybe that leads to me finding out other things that I need to improve in my life, and just going from here, and not just, oh, that was a great call with Julian where I talked about that, and just go back.
Good. Yeah. That would be a failure if that's all it was. And there's no shame in being addicted to something. People get addicted for all kinds of reasons, and addiction's tough.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling you an addict. Maybe you're not. Maybe it's, it could be a bunch of things, but you said addiction. So I'm thinking you've never had sex. It sounds like you've never had sex, and it sounds like you called this a porn addiction. And I'm just like, and then you said you were about to get married, and I was just like, oh man, I hope he's not gonna discover he's a sex addict, because that could be really detrimental to your marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Nothing else. I'm gonna give you the same thing that I've heard pretty much everyone. I just thank you so much for everything. You've meant a lot to my life growing up, so it's great to speak with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and other people like me. This is, as soon as you started doing this live stream earlier this week, I was like, this is the most cool thing that I've seen in this so long. So I really appreciate this platform you're making.
Man, that's amazing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the call. Call back anytime. I wish you the best.
Will do.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow. You guys are just, I'm just so blown away by the callers. Oh my gosh. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much to the chat for hanging in there. It is 12:30 now, almost. And, yeah, I'm seeing the chat. Maddie Cruz. Hope you do this forever. That's really sweet. I would love to do this forever. Ian asks if I'm doing okay. I'm doing great. These callers tonight were what this whole thing is about to me. I'm just so glad. We only had one toast tonight. I think it was toast count 1. Is that right? Does anybody have a better count on the toast? Maybe it was 2. Was it 2 toasts? Does anyone know? Do we have who's the designated toast counter tonight? Does anyone know how many toasts? This is the series where Julian turns into Owen Wilson. Wow. Do I say wow like Owen Wilson? Is this a confession? Owen Wilson does not own WoW, just for the record. Okay, toast count 2. Thank you, Tim Farrens. It's scrolling too fast. I think that's how you pronounce it. Toast count 2. We're gonna have to like come up with we're gonna have to assign a designated toast counter just to make sure we don't lose the toast count, because it's just too much fun to keep track of. But I was pleased that there was only 2 toasts tonight, and I did kind of miss the trolls a little bit, but I'm also glad to see that people are kind of picking up on what this is and not just calling in with nothing. I'm glad we're able to really quickly get to some meaningful calls. I do think that the little note we added to the screen helped. Appreciate that recommendation. Saw it a bunch of times. So thank you guys for your attentiveness and your suggestions. All ears for suggestions, of course, as this thing grows. And even if it stops growing, open to suggestions. I want to remind everyone, again, I meant to say this at the beginning, so it's going to seem strange because I just said it like 20 minutes ago, but if you're on a call, consider the advantages of remaining completely anonymous and not going into the chat and revealing your identity. I'm not disappointed by seeing that. I don't think it's a bad thing, but again, just consider the benefits of remaining completely anonymous. That's all. Yeah, how was tonight for everybody? Any thoughts on things that could make this better? I'm going to jump off here. Phones are closed for the night. But I am curious if there's any thoughts. This will be our last episode until Sunday. We'll be taking a couple days off. No thoughts, it sounds like. People just saying keep doing this and that they learned a lot from the callers. Maybe you tag chat comments off screen. Off-core, I might need a definition on that. I know what a tag is. I'm not sure what you mean by tagging off screen. Off-score has been full of some good suggestions, so I'm sure there's a point there. But you got to keep in mind, you're talking to the guy that just tweeted for the second time in 2 years. So, can you explain it to me like I'm 5? Off-core? Oh, thank you, Nade God, for the super chat. Very sweet. And that reminds me, I missed a couple very generous super chats yesterday, or the day before, the last stream. And I just want to say thank you guys so much. They didn't even have questions. They were I didn't see them until after, so I just wanted to call them out and thank you guys for all the feedback and all the input and support. It's amazing. I will certainly need support because this is an unconventional format. And it's very late at night when I'm doing this at the worst time. It's like I was thinking about doing this in the morning at first. Originally, that was my plan for a long time. And then I started thinking, like, I really think as hard as it's going to be to build, it's got to be at night because that's when people are up late thinking about stuff. That's when the people with the hardest stories are going to call in. So I'm trying to do this at the worst time of the day, I realize, but I'm just encouraged to see that anyone's coming in and no less that we're getting great stories that are encouraging people. That's what this whole thing's about. All right, guys, I'm going to tune out for the night. Thank you guys so much. I will be reviewing this episode for feedback that I may have missed. I appreciate you guys so much. This chat is an invaluable part of this format. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all the support and love you're giving to our callers. And I'm just so excited for this new format. And yeah, thanks so much. Good night. Toast.